Noon, a member of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Office has been chosen as San Antonio's new police chief. Jimmy Martinez says 51-year-old Charles Rodriguez takes over our police department in 1 month. Jimmy?
Lori, it's an appointment that has received mixed reviews. The city council members like it, but the new chief knows he's coming in with police contract negotiations still up in the air and against police union officials who didn't want an outsider for chief. San Antonio's new police chief is a 27-year veteran of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Office. Currently, he is a commander in the predominantly Hispanic East Los Angeles area, overseeing 600 employees and 600,000 citizens. Rodriguez brings with him to San Antonio a master's degree in public administration and training from the National FBI Academy. Besides maintaining law and order, Rodriguez also believes in good public relations.
My feeling about what the police department should do and how we should react to the public is that we should be accessible. I feel like I should be accessible to the people that we're sworn to protect and to provide that service to.
Rodriguez was picked after going through a couple of interviews and psychological testing. He was picked over interim chief Frank Hoyak, who was the favorite of police union officials. The city's police management study, in large part, caused the search for a new chief. But for now, Rodriguez is withholding any judgments.
Well, I'm going to have to look at it a little more carefully. I think there are some things that can be done. I understand that a study that was conducted here made some recommendations, and I'll have to look at those recommendations, and I'll have to develop my own approach as to how I'm going to do that if that's the direction we're going to take. Certainly any recommendation is going to be subject to revision at any one time, subject to interpretation.
City Manager Lou Fox says Rodriguez's selection was not based on his ethnic origin, but on his qualifications, and it should not be a put-down to other candidates from within the department who were not chosen.
There's no reflection on the quality of the individuals within the San Antonio Police Department. I have the highest regard for them in the job that they're required to do. Also have the highest regard for Chief Hoyak. He's done an outstanding job. There's no question about it.
Hoyak had no comment, but Rodriguez is considered an outsider, and the Police Officers Association doesn't like it. We'll have that and other reaction on News Center 4 at 6, Lori.
Okay. And will Rodriguez be bringing home a larger paycheck than his predecessor?
Yes, he will. You know, the current chief gets $56,000, but that salary is going to be increased to $62,000 for Rodriguez. He, like other chiefs, will not be working under a contract.
Okay, Jibby, thank you very much.
Good afternoon. A
26-year law enforcement veteran from California is San Antonio's new chief of police. But as Gary DeLon reports, not all is peaches and cream despite the new chief's credentials.
I've appointed Charles M. Rodriguez as chief of police for the city of San Antonio, and I feel very good about his appointment and his position with the city of San Antonio.
City Manager Lou Fox said Chuck Rodriguez was one of 175 applicants for the job and was selected from a final list of 4. Fox said his decision was not influenced by Rodriguez being Hispanic, but there has been a past cry for a Mexican-American chief. The 51-year-old top cop will make $62,334 a year.
I like the idea of the progressiveness of advancement. You have a very dynamic mayor. You know, you want to be part of something that's directed and moving, and I think that's what I'm thinking of now. I plan to go along with that approach, proactiveness, you know, and direction and professionalism.
But the Rodriguez appointment did not please everyone, including the president of the Police Officers Association. Bob Rudewick says hiring an outsider was a slap in the face.
Why don't we qualify? Why aren't we considered in the same light as the outsiders? Ever since we've seen the staff come on board here, we've just had one after another from the outside coming in. What are they saying to the people of San Antonio? We're not good enough to run a show?
City Manager Lou Fox says the selection of Rodriguez, an outsider, is no reflection at all on the quality of San Antonio police officers. Untrue, says Bob Rudewick of the association. It was a direct slap in the face. So ex-Marine Rodriguez may have a new beachhead to establish, that of his own credibility. I'm Gary DeLon, Channel 5 Eyewitness News.
City Manager Fox praised the work of interim chief Frank Hoyak, who will now go back to the post of deputy chief. We'll have more on the new man at SAPD on Eyewitness News at 6 o'clock.
Rick Benjamin, San Antonio tonight has a new police chief.
The first Mexican-American police chief in recent department history was named by City Manager Lou Fox this morning. Newswatch 12's Mary Walker was there for the long-awaited announcement.
51-year-old Charles Rodriguez was introduced to reporters at a morning news conference. The new police chief, who starts the job November 14th, has been with the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department for 26 years. He was one of 4 people outside the San Antonio Police Department who was asked to interview for the job. City Manager Lou Fox explained why Rodriguez was chosen.
I felt that he had a sense of purpose. He has a sense of understanding about police work and the police organization. He not only is a doer, he's a teacher.
Rodriguez worked his way up from county jail duties to commander of 3 patrol sections with 600 people under his command. At the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, his salary was $60,000 a year. Here, he will make only $2,300 more. He talked to us about his law enforcement philosophy.
Personal philosophy is that we do provide a service to the public, and within that service we have a number of functions, one being enforcement of laws and protection of property and so forth. That is my emphasis.
Meanwhile, Police Union President Sergeant Robert Rudewick told reporters the appointment of Rodriguez, an outsider, is a slap in the face to local police officers.
I know right now that they're very resentful of the way that this has happened. What they're saying to the people here is we don't have anyone here who's qualified to run the department.
Frank Hoyak, the man who took over as interim police chief during the search, had no comment on the new chief today. Until the decision was made over the weekend, Hoyak had been in the running for the job. Mary Walker, Newswatch 12.
So finally, a long-standing issue settled by the city.
But it appears that some people may have been taken by surprise, at least a little bit, by the announcement today. Frank Hoyak was not the only person with nothing to say on the selection of Rodriguez as the city's new police chief. Sonia Hernandez, who heads the COPS organization today, said she'd have no comment either. Our City Hall reporter, Kathy Teague, is standing by live. Kathy, I understand we'll also have to wait to hear reaction from some council members who you might expect to hear from.
That's right, Rick. Some of the more vocal ones, such as Van Archer, Joe Webb, and Benny Ueste, they are all out of town, still entered at the International Trade Conference. They will be back later this week, and we'll probably have some comments then. Most of the other council members today said they were a little bit surprised by the decision, but not disappointed.
San Antonio is an up-and-coming city, a world-status city. And I think we need a chief of that stature also. And in this situation, I approve of going out and getting the best we could find in the United States, not only in San Antonio.
We're going to try to make the police department as conspicuous as possible. That's going to be my personal challenge to the police chief. And I'm going to hope that he would try to work with the city council members to try and raise the image of the police department within neighborhoods, within communities where many have complained that they don't see enough policemen.
Alderete also said that he hoped that Rodriguez would implement some of the programs brought out in the management study released earlier this year. He was reviewing that study earlier today with Rolando Bono to talk about some of the findings in that report. Now, the only real negative comment that came out of City Hall today was from City Councilwoman Helen Duttmer. She said, like Rudewick, that she was disappointed in the selection from the aspect that it came from out of town, out of state, and not even within the San Antonio Police Department.
Okay, Kathy, thank you very much.
San Antonio's new police chief is a 27-year veteran of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. City Manager Lou Fox appointed Charles Rodriguez today, pointing out Rodriguez's experience in law enforcement and administration. But Jimmy Martinez reports tonight some police officers are angry an outsider was chosen to head the department.
During job interviews, Charles Rodriguez presented himself as being people-oriented. He has pledged to make the department more accessible to the people it serves. But for now, his toughest challenge may be winning over the support of the rank and file.
And wait, somebody named Rodriguez from Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, I believe. Y'all hold it down a little bit.
Many officers look to interim chief Frank Hoyak as the next chief, but this is the second time in 5 years Hoyak is passed up for someone else. Hoyak had no comment today, but other officers did.
I know that when you consider a person who has taken the helm of our department and I think done a very, very good job, that has to be considered above bringing in someone totally from the outside.
think it's a crying shame they can't pick somebody from our own department. The city, in effect, is saying that they don't have anybody in this department or in this city capable of doing the job.
The morale is low, and what he's going to do to improve it's going to be something else to find out. You know, we're going to have to wait and see.
The mayor says the officers have no choice but to accept the new chief. Rodriguez says he understands the anger, but is asking for a chance.
I'm just going to have to sell them that it's not a slap in the face, and it's something that's going to be good for the department, I think.
Many officers say they will give Rodriguez a chance, but it's given under the assumption that Rodriguez, like other chiefs, will be controlled by City Hall. Juby Martinez, News Center 4.
The city's first Mexican-American police chief is finally on the job. Charles Rodriguez, a former veteran commander with the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Office, started his day early. He met with City Manager Lou Fox before going over to police headquarters.
The chief comes on board at a time when morale among some of the officers is perhaps at an all-time low. They are bitter about their contract negotiations, which are stalled, and about Rodriguez, an outsider, being put in charge. With us now to talk about this is the chief himself, live from his office at police headquarters. Chief, first of all, welcome to San Antonio. It sounds like you have your work cut out for you, and it looks like you have some fence mending to do. But how do you see it?
Well, so far, you know, I've received a very warm welcome. I haven't had any problems whatsoever. I'm just glad that I'm here on the job.
Chief Rodriguez, how do you plan to win the support of your officers and put it all back together, get everybody working together?
Well, you know, we're going to have to develop our own credibility. We're going to have to be visible. We're going to have to show concern. We're going to have to show support for the needs of the rank and file.
The city manager does not appear to be in good terms with some of the officers, Chief. Has Mr. Fox told you how he would like you to deal with the officers, or have you received any prodding at all from the administration?
Mr. Fox has given me no prodding. He has not given me any specific instructions. We talked about that, and I think he's going to leave it pretty much up to me.
Chief, more than the discontent within the police department, I think the people of San Antonio would like to know how you plan to combat one of their major concerns, which is rising crime. Do you have a plan at this point?
At present, I haven't really looked at any figures to indicate what plan of attack we should develop and into what crime areas. So we're going to have to work with that also. It's been a pretty hectic day today, and I'm really not prepared to discuss those specific plans that we're going to have to be dealing with.
We understand, Chief. We realize that this is your first day and that you're going to have to look at this and assess it yourself so that you can make your own decisions. Let me ask you this. There have been rumors that some officers plan to circulate petitions asking for the election of our police chief in the future. Whether or not that's true, is that the kind of thing you would support?
Definitely not. I don't think that we want to have another political element. I think the idea of having politics in law enforcement is really not appropriate.
Okay, Chief. Again, welcome to San Antonio and good luck on the job.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief Rodriguez.
El nuevo jefe de la policía de San Antonio, Charles Rodríguez, tomó hoy posición oficial de su puesto y según el señor Rodríguez será una tarea difícil, pues en los últimos 6 meses se ha registrado un alto porcentaje de criminalidad en la ciudad y además existe un descontento interno por su nombramiento. Edgar Rivera tiene más detalles.
El nuevo jefe de policía de San Antonio y el primer hispano en toda la historia de la ciudad se enfrenta en su primer día de trabajo a una serie de rumores por parte del cuerpo policial. En medio de ese ambiente, se reunió por primera vez con todos sus asistentes para conocerles personalmente y comunicarles su intención de formar un solo equipo de trabajo. No obstante, un reducido número del sindicato de policía trata de entablar una demanda contra la ciudad para que se anule el contrato del nuevo jefe y sea por medio de una votación pública que se decida el nombramiento de ese importante cargo. Por su parte, el nuevo jefe dice que los rumores a él no le preocupan y que lo único que le preocupa es servir a la comunidad, darse a conocer y de esta manera terminar con esos rumores.
Las quejas fueron unas cosas emocionantes, ¿verdad? Yo creo que no va a pasar nada. Yo digo que eso va a pasar y que todo se va a calmar un poco y que va a estar todo bien. No estoy yo preocupado por eso.
Por otro lado, un buen grupo de policías expresó que la experiencia que posee el señor Charles Rodríguez será de mucho beneficio para la ciudad de San Antonio. ya que él está acostumbrado a trabajar en ciudades grandes. De las ciudades grandes de Estados Unidos, únicamente Phoenix, Arizona y San Antonio cuentan con jefes de policías hispanos. Y en opinión de muchos agentes de policía, expresan que el único problema con el nuevo jefe es que tiene apellido hispano. Edgar Rivera, para Reporter 41.
Bueno, efectivamente, Charles Rodríguez es hispano, originario de California y fungía como asistente del sheriff en la ciudad de Los Ángeles.
The city's new police chief, Charles Rodriguez, went on the job today. He says so far he's received a warm welcome from police staffers he's met. He also met with the city manager, the fire chief, and Mayor Henry Cisneros. The chief earlier today talked with us in a live News Center 4 interview. He said he wants to change the image of the department and has no plans of being a city hall puppet.
Well, you know, we're going to have to develop our own credibility. We're going to have to be visible. We're going to have to show concern. We're going to have to show support for the needs of the rank and file.
The city manager does not appear to be in good terms with some of the officers, Chief. Has Mr. Fox told you how he would like you to deal with the officers, or have you received any prodding at all from the administration?
Mr. Fox has given me no prodding. He has not given me any specific instructions. We talked about that, and I think he's going to leave it pretty much up to me.
Tonight, a man who claims his depression was...
We have today a special ceremonial item. It is one that we conduct with great pleasure, and that is the taking of office of our police chief, Charles Rodriguez. Would Police Chief Rodriguez please come forward at this time? Please come up here to where the city clerk is, if you would come around up top. It is a special day in that our chief is sworn in officially today. He has been managing the department since Monday. I want to congratulate him, congratulate the city manager, congratulate the city council, and congratulate all who will benefit from his wise and just guidance and counsel of our police department. Norma, would you proceed to administer the oath?
Yes, thank you. Would you raise your right hand and repeat after me? I, and state your name.
I, Charles Rodriguez,
Do solemnly swear.
do solemnly swear
That I will faithfully execute.
that I will faithfully execute
The duties of the office.
the duties of the office
Of Chief of Police.
of Chief of Police
Of the City of San Antonio.
of the City of San Antonio
Of the State of Texas.
of the State of Texas,
And will,
and will,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend.
protect,
Preserve,
and defend
the Constitution and laws
the Constitution and laws
of the United States
of the United States
and of this state.
and of this state.
And I furthermore solemnly swear
And I furthermore solemnly swear
that I have not directly
I have not directly
nor indirectly paid, offered, or promised to pay,
offered or promised to pay,
contributed, nor promised to contribute
contributed nor promised to contribute
any money or valuable thing,
any money or valuable thing,
or promise any public office
or promise any public office
or employment
or employment
as a reward
for the giving
or withholding
of
of the appointment of which I was appointed. So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, Chief. Under the 1269M, this is the first chief of police to be officially confirmed by the city council, so we all have a proprietary stake in you, chief, and your work. We're very proud of you.
Thank you. I'm very pleased to be
Chief, good luck to you. You've got the support of the people of San Antonio, the city government, and the police department. Best wishes.
I've been made to feel very welcome here. Thank you very much.
Good. Good luck to you as you get back to work. The next item is
San Antonio politicians, businessmen, and other city officials turned out tonight to honor our new police chief here. The Mexican-American Business and Professional Association held a reception at the La Carreta restaurant tonight for Chief Charles Rodriguez. Rodriguez said the show of support was a nice gesture after a controversial first 2 weeks.
More than interesting. It's been hectic, really, but I'm enjoying it. And the reason I'm enjoying it is because I've met a lot of nice people. I've been shown a lot of support, and this is just one aspect of it.
The association hopes to make the chief just feel at home in San Antonio.
I'm Rick Benjamin. San Antonio's new police chief is already starting to shake things up at the department.
Police Chief Charles Rodriguez has been on the job for less than a month, and already he's sending shockwaves through the police association. Today, Rodriguez said he didn't like management-level officers being members of the police association, and added he may go outside the department to find assistant police chiefs. Kathy Teague is standing by live at the police department with the department's reaction. And Kathy, I imagine that is not favorable reaction.
It's not favorable at all right now, Deborah. About 3 o'clock this afternoon during roll call was when the rank and file officers began to first really get their briefing from the Police Association of what Rodriguez has been saying the last 2 days. And their reaction, of course, was not good. The officers were saying that that was the first time that they got their first idea of where the new police chief was coming from.
In Texas, it's not unusual for police captains and even deputy chiefs to get involved with the rank-and-file police associations. It's seen as just confirming their part in the brotherhood of police officers. But new San Antonio Police Chief Charles Rodriguez says he sees their participation as a conflict of interest.
If I could, I'd like to encourage the managers to negotiate at their level if they have to. But I don't know if I'd be able to force that.
And what's more, he doesn't want his 2 assistant police chiefs to belong to the association, and he says he's willing to go outside the department to find them. Speaking on both issues for the police association, lawyer Joe Gilbreth said Rodriguez is violating the police department's contract with the city.
Well, that's blatant violation of the First Amendment of the United States Constitution, to 5 separate articles of this contract, to both state laws which deal with labor relations among police organizations and cities.
Gilbreth added that Rodriguez is trying to break the association in order to gain a bigger influence over the rank and file.
Now, Deborah, the police union representatives, such as Mr. Sergeant Rudewick, have been told not to comment on this latest development and take a wait-and-see type attitude, although they have been talking to the rank and file to explaining the situation. Sergeant Rudewick has told them that he will back them up all of the way, and they're going to have a board meeting Tuesday to discuss the matter and decide on what plan of action to take then. I'm Kathy Teague with Live Watch 12.
The San Antonio Police Officers Association will consider filing a grievance against the new police chief at its next board meeting. That's what an attorney for the officers union says is an option that will be presented to the board. Joe Gilbreth, an attorney with CLEAT, Combined Law Enforcement Association of Texas, says they are concerned with the chief's comment that he would not appoint any member of the association to assistant chief. Gilbreth says if that's the plan, it would discriminate against association members and discourages membership, a direct violation of the contract.
If you were a potential candidate for assistant chief, would you want to be a member of the association with this fellow for chief who says you'll never make assistant chief if I'm chief and you're in the association?
Chief Charles Rodriguez says that's not what he said. Rodriguez says if and when the assistant chief's positions open up in the department, he'd like the benefit of selecting people from within and outside that he can work with.
The association or membership in the association was to the effect that I feel that there is some kind of there can be some kind of a conflict when you have managers that are part of the rank and file association.
Rodriguez says he has not made any direct moves to discourage association membership and that he would select an assistant chief from the association membership. A Bexar County Grand...
Good evening. Police Chief Charles Rodriguez has only been on the job for 3 weeks, but already there's a major confrontation between the chief and the men who represent his police officers. The issue is who should be hired as assistant chiefs. Ann Wheeler has more.
I want to be able to select my assistant chiefs. They can come from the inside or the outside, and I just want people that I can work with.
That's how Police Chief Charles Rodriguez plans to hire his 2 right-hand men.
The chief says his assistants can belong to the Police Officers Association, but he sees problems with that and would prefer that they belong to a different union group. The Police Officers Association doesn't like the way the issue is being handled. They accuse the chief of being a puppet of the city manager and of trying to divide the association.
I think they're trying to divide the association and perhaps destroy it, but certainly divide it and weaken it. And the purpose, I suspect, is they want to concentrate more power in a single office or two over in City Hall.
And although this is an internal battle, police say the public should be concerned.
Now, if you build in this hostility between the city and the chief and the police association, you'll turn what has been a fraternal organization into a hardcore union, and you'll have some real problems here in the long run.
How much talk is there of a strike among the police officers?
I don't get to communicate with that many, but I've heard sentiment like they wish they could.
And just how will the police officers fight the chief on this issue? First, they say they will file a labor grievance. Then they say they are considering going to court. And finally, the police officers say they will take their complaint directly to the city council and the community. Ann Wheeler, Channel 5 Eyewitness News.
Right now, there are 6 deputy police chiefs. Now, the city wants to change that and allow the chief to appoint 2 assistants. The entire issue is being negotiated in the contract between police officers and the city, and right now, those contract talks pretty much at an impasse.
Residents of a West Side neighborhood terrorized by a rapist still on the loose are getting some extra police protection tonight. Lincoln courts got the extra patrol after residents brought their concerns about the growing number of rapes here to the new police chief. Since August, there have been at least 7 rapes in this area, the latest occurring December 1st. The attacker, described as a black male, just under 6 feet tall, breaks into homes usually after midnight and has preyed on single mothers. Residents met with Chief Charles Rodriguez again last night. Rodriguez assured them that they'd be seeing more officers and that a special unit of plainclothes officers would be working the area trying to find the rapist.
We expect to make an impact, and I think the impact is going to be immediate. It's going to be immediate in terms of the people that are there that are causing problems, but it's going to be more importantly, an impact in the feeling of security and safety of the people in that area.
Rodriguez says they will be working with residents also to curb burglaries in the Lincoln courts. They're trying to set up a neighborhood watch program where residents can call with information, hopefully before a crime occurs.
Well, for the 10th time this year,
Hoy se llevó a cabo el funeral del policía Gilberto Ramírez, quien murió en la pasada Nochebuena cumpliendo con su deber. Una caravana de autos pertenecientes a políticos, familiares, amigos y compañeros del Departamento de Policía acompañaron el féretro desde la iglesia Buenaventura hasta el cementerio San Fernando, donde Gilberto Ramírez fue sepultado. Edgar Rivera tiene más detalles.
Efectivamente, con una ceremonia sencilla pero solemne, centenares de personas se dieron cita a la iglesia de San Buenaventura para las honras fúnebres del policía Gilberto Ramírez, quien falleciera trágicamente mientras cumplía su deber. El pueblo entero allí estaba representado por oficiales públicos, compañeros de trabajo, familiares y gente sencilla del pueblo que muchos de ellos no lo conocieron al oficial, pero sí, todos con su silencio brindaron un tributo al servidor de la ciudad. Todos los cuerpos policiales de diferentes ciudades del condado de Béjar hicieron acto de presencia y el jefe de policía de San Antonio lamentó la tragedia y expresa que se tomarán medidas preventivas.
Lamento yo la muerte del oficial. Es una cosa que no queremos que pase. Todos los que estamos en la carrera de policíaco, ¿verdad? Estamos en un tiempo u otro durante nuestra carrera así en el mismo caso y nos da mucha pena que pasen estas cosas.
El oficial Gilberto Ramírez ingresó al Departamento de Policía en el año de 1978, poco tiempo después que se retiró del Navy, y es el 28º policía que muere en cumplimiento de su deber desde el año de 1924. En el cementerio San Fernando, su esposa, sus hijos, su padre, al igual que sus compañeros de policía, dijeron el último adiós. Con la muerte trágica del policía Gilberto Ramírez, la unidad del cuerpo policial ha sido evidente y el ejemplo del cumplimiento del deber heredado por Ramírez está vivo en cada uno de ellos. Edgar Rivera, para Reporter 41.
Patrolman Gilbert Ramirez was laid to rest today. He's the officer who was shot in the neck last week while answering a disturbance call on the city's south side. Family members wept bitterly as they took their last look. Over 500 policemen joined them for the farewell. Many city officials paid their respects too. In fact, there was not enough room inside St. Bonaventure Church for everyone. There were law officers from all branches in several other cities. This is all part of the brotherhood shared by the officers, and it's situations like this that bring the reality of the danger of their job close to home.
Is taking it pretty hard. You know, a fallen comrade, a fallen officer. Any one of us at some point in our career could have been in the same position. And our hearts go out to the family.
This family has weathered 3 deaths in the past 5 years. Ramirez's brother and nephew also lost their lives.
Pretty bad situation for the San Antonio Police Department today. 2 San Antonio officers are on the run tonight. As we broke the story yesterday, they were named in sealed indictments for drug racketeering. Sharon Jones is live now at the police department with the latest developments today. Sharon?
2 veteran San Antonio police officers are being sought tonight on federal charges of drug trafficking and conspiracy. As we told you, the indictments were handed down yesterday. They were unsealed just this afternoon against patrolman Paul Lopez and Jesus Gonzalez Jr. Lopez, a 12-year veteran of SAPD, and Gonzalez, with 8 years on the force, are charged with selling cocaine and marijuana. Drug enforcement agents working undercover are said to have bought substantial amounts of drugs from Lopez and Gonzalez. Chief Charles Rodriguez said this afternoon that when DEA agents and SAPD went to arrest Gonzalez and Lopez, they apparently got wind of the indictments and fled.
Jesus Gonzalez Jr. are fugitives, and a bond has been set at $500,000 each. And this was recommended by the federal grand jury. At the present time, we do not know where the fugitives are. It is hoped that they will come in and surrender themselves.
Jesus Gonzalez Jr. was apparently on duty last night. When he learned that police officers were pursuing him, he abandoned his patrol car in a remote area of the county. As to both of the officers' whereabouts, it is unknown. There has been no contact from anyone or by their families to the San Antonio Police Department. Paul Lopez faces 11 counts of in the federal indictment. He could face a 95-year sentence and a $160,000 fine. Gonzalez faces 6 counts in the federal indictment and 40 years and a $75,000 fine. There was also a 3rd man, not a San Antonio police officer, that was named in the indictment, but apparently part of the conspiracy to sell drugs. Raul Hector Martinez. He has 5 counts against him as part of that conspiracy and part of the ongoing investigation, which is still going on by drug enforcement agents. It's been going on for about 10 months now, and Chief Rodriguez told us that it was initiated by his department on some information that they had gotten. As of right now, there's an intensive search for the 2 officers. It's not known if they are armed or their whereabouts. The investigation and the search is being conducted by DEA agents and local police and narcotics agents with the San Antonio Police Department. I'm Sharon Jones with Mobile 4 Live at the San Antonio Police Department.
Sharon, one quick question. We've heard rumblings that not only may these officers have been involved in selling drugs, but they may have foiled other drug busts by tipping off peddlers. Have you heard the same thing?
No, I haven't heard anything like that at all, David.
All right. Thanks. Thanks for the developments on this.
Two San Antonio police officers are fugitives from justice this afternoon. They were indicted by a federal grand jury yesterday on charges of drug trafficking, the distribution of narcotics, and conspiracy. Roy Rutanen has been working the story and is here now with the latest. Roy?
Fred, the investigation's been going on for 10 months. It was initiated by the San Antonio Police Department, who called in the Drug Enforcement Agency. Undercover DEA agents bought what was termed as a sizable amount of marijuana and cocaine from these two police officers. Patrolman Paul Lopez, a 12-year veteran of the department. He has 11 counts against him. If convicted, he could be sentenced to prison for 95 years. Patrolman Jesse Gonzalez had 11 years on the force. He could receive a prison term and a $70,000 fine. Bond has been set for the two at $500,000 each, but they're still at large. This morning, the patrol car Gonzalez was driving last night was found abandoned behind a tire shop on the corner of Penn Road and Markham. At a news conference this afternoon, Chief of Police Charles Rodriguez told reporters that another man, a civilian, has also been indicted, but so far there haven't been any arrests. Fred, we'll have more coming up on this at 6.
Thank you, Roy. A federal...
Not the only startling development today. An intense manhunt is underway now for two veteran San Antonio police officers indicted by a federal grand jury on drug charges. The 11-count indictments came down yesterday. They include charges of narcotics trafficking, conspiracy, and racketeering. Bond for the two fugitive officers has been set at $500,000 each. A third person also has been indicted in the case. Our Mary Walker is with us live now with the latest on that story. Mary?
Rick, that manhunt is being conducted by both the San Antonio Police Department and the Drug Enforcement Administration. The announcement of the indictments came just 24 hours after they were handed down. The two police officers indicted on the drug charges are both veteran officers. Paul Lopez has been on the force for 12 years and Jesus Gonzalez for 8 years. They are charged with distributing and possessing cocaine and marijuana, that while on duty, at times from their police cars.
At the present time, Paul Lopez and Jesus Gonzalez Jr. are fugitives, and a bond has been set at $500,000 each.
Rodriguez says Gonzalez was on duty yesterday when he apparently learned of the indictments. He allegedly abandoned his police car on the city's far west side and fled. His car was returned to the police department by another officer this morning. Rodriguez says the source of narcotics allegedly sold by the officers has not yet been determined, but they believe the drugs came from outside the department. A third man was indicted with the pair. He is in custody. Lopez, if convicted on all 11 counts of the indictments, could receive 95 years in prison and a fine of $160,000. Gonzalez, 45 years and a $75,000 fine. Rick, the indictments culminate a 9-month investigation by federal undercover narcotics agents, but the investigation itself was initiated by the police department. This is Mary Walker with Live Watch 12 at the San Antonio Police Department. Rick?
Okay, Mary, thanks very much.
Tonight, two San Antonio policemen are on the run. They are fugitives of the law after being named as suspects in a drug trafficking operation. News Center 4 first broke the story last night, and since then, our Sharon Jones has been following the story. She's with Mobile 4 Live to update the story for us. Sharon?
Thank you, Dan. Two San Antonio veteran policemen have found themselves on the other side of the law tonight. Veteran patrolman Paul Lopez and Jesus Gonzalez Jr. are wanted on federal charges of drug trafficking and conspiracy. The two officers apparently fled yesterday, just after the indictments were handed down. Lopez is a 12-year veteran. Gonzalez has been on the force for 8 years. Both are alleged to have sold large amounts of cocaine and marijuana to undercover agents. Late this afternoon, Chief Charles Rodriguez unveiled the charges and the investigation, which Rodriguez says is still going on.
Department of Drug Enforcement was instrumental in conducting much of the undercover investigations on this, and they were the ones that actually made the case. Now, keep in mind that the initial action on this was determined by this department some months back. I think the investigation's been going on for about 9-10 months.
Again, both of the officers are fugitives tonight. Gonzalez was apparently on duty last night. When he learned of his imminent arrest, he drove his patrol car to a remote section of the county along Penn Road and abandoned it. Both men face serious charges tonight, not only trafficking but conspiracy charges, which include warning others that activities of police who might arrest those for dealing drugs. David Scott had asked me this question earlier. After looking over the indictment more carefully, this is part of the conspiracy charges. A friend of the two indicted officers was shocked and amazed when we told him about the news. Patrolman Rafael Gonzalez says he never worked with more professional men than Jesus Gonzalez, who is no relation to him, and Paul Lopez.
Paul Lopez was.
He was a good officer. He was a hard-working officer. That's what I don't understand, that he was one of the top officers on his shift. And for as many years as he's been on, he never slowed down or never showed any, a sign of that he would, that he would be in any kind of trouble whatsoever.
And the other one, Jesse Gonzalez Jr.?
He was also a good officer, and he worked real hard. He worked real hard, and I just can't understand what happened. I just don't.
Other officers refused to talk to us, but one who's been through this himself and found not guilty told us to remember that Gonzalez and Lopez should be afforded the presumption of innocence until proven otherwise. At this time, Chief Rodriguez is hoping that the officers will surrender themselves. Bond has already been set at $500,000 for each. And other news from the
Two San Antonio police officers indicted yesterday by a federal grand jury are now listed as fugitives from justice. Both men have not been seen since the indictments were handed down. The SAPD initiated the investigation of its own officers, and the Drug Enforcement Agency was called in. Roy Rutanen's been following the story today. He has this report.
Patrolman Paul Lopez, a 12-year veteran of the department, could receive a 95-year prison term for the 11 counts against him. Patrolman Jesse Gonzalez had 8 years on the force, and in addition to a 40-year prison term, could be fined up to $70,000. Both were indicted by a federal grand jury Tuesday on charges of drug trafficking, distribution of narcotics, and conspiracy. Bond was set at $500,000 each. Both men are still at large. Earlier today, the patrol car Gonzalez was driving late Tuesday night was found abandoned near a tire shop. At a news conference, Chief of Police Charles Rodriguez told reporters that the investigation of the officers had been going on for 10 months and that a civilian, Raul Martinez, had also been indicted. Martinez is still at large. The men are accused of selling large amounts of cocaine and pot to undercover DEA agents.
At the present time, we do not know where the fugitives are. It is hoped that they will come in and surrender themselves.
Chief Rodriguez told reporters he expects this incident will have a positive effect within the department, in that if wrongdoing is discovered, he won't hesitate to do something about it. He also says the investigation into this matter is far from over. Roy Rutanen, Channel 5 Eyewitness News.
Once again, the police started that investigation themselves. Because the investigation is still open, the total amount of drugs involved, street value of them, size of the distribution network, all that is now being withheld.
Two bad apples don't spoil the whole bunch. That's the reaction of new Police Chief Charles Rodriguez to this week's drug arrest of the two police officers. The chief told Newswatch 12 tonight that it's important the public know that the city police department began that investigation that resulted in the arrests of the two officers, Lopez and Gonzalez.
The important thing, I think, here is that in the incident that occurred with the two officers, we were the ones that instigated the whole investigation, and I think that means that we are concerned with what goes on inside.
The chief also says every police department has problems, but he intends to run a clean department.
You know, they always say that figures don't lie, and the figures show that local lawmen are writing fewer traffic tickets. Now get this, Jibby Martinez reports that the city says on the one hand there isn't a slowdown, but on the other hand they're trying to stop it.
The police officers say they don't know of any traffic ticket slowdown, and the City Hall officials refuse to call it a slowdown. They call it a productivity decrease. But whatever it's called, the numbers show that the number of traffic tickets issued went down dramatically in the final 2 months of last year, a 55% decrease from October to December. The revenues from fines paid to the city have also dropped so far by 37%. City officials say they are concerned not only because traffic revenues are down, but also because the public safety is at stake. They say that every time the number of traffic tickets goes down, the number of accidents goes up. The police chief can't explain why the number of traffic tickets went down in November, but he says the cold December weather may account for the continued decrease. Police Association officials were unavailable for comment today, but they have previously denied knowledge of the slowdown. Rumors of a ticket slowdown began last fall. supposedly in protest of the selection of Rodriguez as police chief. The chief says he is going to find out who's not doing his job.
After we get information as to less citations being given out, then we can monitor the amount. We can monitor who's giving what and who isn't.
The chief says his deputies will go through the records and keep an eye on the number of traffic tickets being issued to make sure the decrease doesn't continue. Jibby Martinez, News Center 4.
Yes, it's a break.
San Antonio Police Chief Charles Rodriguez took a special tour today of the city's east side. The tour was led by Police Captain James Robinson after Rodriguez requested a look at the special problems on that side of town. 2 ministers accompanied the chief, pointing out areas of concern for him. Rodriguez made stops at the police recruiting station, the Martin Luther King Park, and at the San Antonio Register newspaper, before dining at an East Side restaurant. He talked with our police reporter, Mary Walker, about why he requested the tour of that side of San Antonio.
To be aware of what is going on, and in order to be familiar with the people that we have to provide service for, I have to get acquainted with the area. I have to get acquainted with the people that live here. I have to get acquainted with people that are the movers here, the businessmen, and I like to do that personally.
Rodriguez plans other such tours. He left local black leaders on this particular visit convinced he is indeed concerned about East Side problems.
How well would San Antonio be able to handle a disaster, a plane crash, a terrorist attack, or something of that nature? That was the question city emergency teams were trying to answer today during a mock disaster drill. Our Kathy Teague was on hand for the operation.
There's by calls from citizens as parts of the airplane have landed on a line from the convention center northeast to 4th Avenue. The entire downtown is supposed to be evacuated. We need a perimeter and a plan.
There are fires raging through the convention and hemisphere area of the downtown.
It all sounded so real, but it wasn't. What happened in San Antonio was just a test. A mock disaster designed to see how the city would cope with a catastrophe.
The script was unbelievable. After a tornado the day before, bad weather again strikes the city. An airliner explodes in the air before crashing into the convention center and a nearby hotel. There are fires everywhere, power outages, and hundreds of people killed.
And to top it all off, more tornadoes and even terrorists.
There have been a number of threats of bombs, and whether they're authentic or not, we don't know.
The disaster drill was designed by a consultant to test the city's decision makers to see if they could handle the pressures of a crisis. Everything from legal complications to food for the survivors had to have solutions.
And they'll go ahead and serve meals like they normally do during regular school hours.
In the end, San Antonio survived. Even though emergency teams knew there would be a certain amount of chaos, even before the drill was over, they were saying that communications needed to be better. Officials say between now and when a real disaster strikes is the time when changes will be made. Changes, they say, to ensure that the city will be able to handle the worst. Kathy Teague, Newswatch 12.
Por otra parte, a través del país, cada ciudad está en el proceso de analizar sus respectivos sistemas de emergencia. Aquí en San Antonio, por ejemplo, todas las personas claves del gobierno municipal se reunieron para ver qué tan eficaz podría responder el sistema de emergencia en el evento de un desastre de mayores proporciones. Luis Zúñiga nos tiene los detalles.
En este momento hemos declarado una situación de desastre local y hemos pedido la asistencia de la Guardia Nacional, del gobernador y a ver cómo progresamos desde aquí.
En caso de una situación de desastre real, este edificio localizado en el Auditorium Circle en el centro de San Antonio sería el punto donde se reunirían tanto autoridades militares como civiles, de donde eventualmente saldrían las decisiones finales. Teniendo como antecedente desastres aéreos como el sucedido hace 3 años en San Diego, California, donde perecieron más de un centenar de personas, las autoridades civiles y militares de San Antonio realizaron un simulacro donde se reunieron el alcalde y las principales dependencias de seguridad y servicio público. Pero ¿está realmente preparado el municipio para hacer frente a una situación de emergencia?
Yo creo que estamos preparados, sí, tenemos los planes que todos los departamentos han leído y han practicado.
Solos no podemos hacerlo, ¿verdad? Pero tenemos mucha ayuda
organizaciones que nos pueden ayudar con gente, con equipo y todo.
La concentración de hoteles, restaurantes, centros de convenciones y las 5 bases militares en el área metropolitana de San Antonio bien pudieran ser, en caso dado, los puntos propicios para atentados terroristas, incendios o desastres naturales. En San Antonio, Luis Zúñiga para SIN.
Por supuesto que este mismo sistema de emergencia estaría en juego en el evento de un ataque nuclear.
David, this afternoon, a policewoman is in good spirits following a shootout on the west side. Bruce Howard reports she was the first woman in department history to be wounded.
It all started at this gas station just before midnight when Officer Romana Lopez was investigating a possible burglary. Lopez, as shown in this artist depiction, found a gas station door open, then saw a man approaching her. As she got out of her patrol car and drew her weapon, the suspect pointed his pistol at her. There was a standoff, and although the department has not said who fired first, a shootout began. The suspect, Emilio Alvarez, was hit twice in the chest, ran, and then died. Lopez was hit in the chest also, but a bulletproof vest deflected the round and saved her life. A bullet did hit her left index finger. Officer Lopez was then brought here to the emergency room at the county hospital. She was in surgery for 2 hours. This afternoon, when the chief visited her at the hospital, he found out her finger had been amputated, but he said that won't prevent her from going back to work. He also said that Lopez, like other policewomen he knows of that have been wounded, performed admirably.
They had presence of mind to look at the whole situation and evaluate it and act on it. And I think that's what we're telling our officers. And women the women that I have been in contact with in these situations have demonstrated that. And certainly Officer Lopez did.
Bruce Howard, News Center 4.
A San Antonio police officer can thank her bulletproof vest that she's alive tonight after an early morning shootout in which one man was killed. The officer, 29-year-old Ramona Lopez, was making a routine patrol on the city's southwest side when a gunman confronted her at a gas station. 25-year-old Emilio Alvarez allegedly told Lopez he was going to kill her and then opened fire. Lopez returned several shots, hitting him in the chest.
Noticed the vehicle parked behind the service station, stopped to check out the service station, and later noticed somebody walk up into the driveway, and he drew the pistol and she drew hers.
Alvarez died on the scene. The officer was wounded in the hand, her life spared by the bulletproof vest she was wearing.
The police department is cracking down on people with outstanding traffic violations. Beginning next month, officers will be sent out to arrest those with tickets on file at municipal court. Chief Charles Rodriguez initiated the push when he learned there are more than 70,000 warrants bogging down the municipal system.
Municipal court no doubt receives hundreds of traffic tickets each day. It's become apparent not many of them are ever paid. There are about 72,000 arrest warrants on file here, some dating back to 1981. Chief Charles Rodriguez says violators seem to think nothing will be done, and today outlined a plan to crack down on these outstanding tickets. Rodriguez says starting next month, extra officers will be assigned to arrest people who haven't paid their fine.
We probably will have people that will have a number of citations that they're going to get arrested on. So that means for each citation, for the amount, they're going to have the amount necessary. Some people will only have one, it'll be a minimum.
But traffic violators will be given a chance to turn themselves in. If there's a warrant for your arrest, you have from now until the end of February to pay your fine at municipal court.
The grace period was set up to allow people to come in to clear their warrants so they can avoid the embarrassment of being arrested at their home or at work. More than half the tickets are for driving without a license or proof of liability insurance. But those that come in and clear their record before February 29th can avoid extra charges.
The municipal court will be open 2 Saturdays this month, February 18th and 25th, to accommodate those who can't come downtown during the week. Then beginning March 5th, police officers will start arresting people with outstanding traffic warrants. If you have any questions about your ticket or whether a warrant has been issued, you can call the municipal court hotline at 299-8977.
Good evening and welcome to this Tuesday night edition of Perspective. I'm Oscar Garza. You know, as taxpayers, we're entitled to a number of things, among them police protection, and critics here in San Antonio have said that our police protection is even less than basic, and there are some statistics that might bear some of that argument out. And so you'd be hard-pressed to think about why actually someone would want to be the police chief of a city which has gotten so much criticism in the way of police protection. And tonight, probably we'll find out why Mr. Charles Rodriguez decided to accept the job as police chief of the city of San Antonio, a position that he has held for a little over 2 months. And we thank you. We're honored to have you here with us, and we thank you for coming on the program after being here for such a short period of time.
Thank you.
We're broadcasting live tonight from our studios in downtown San Antonio, and we'll be taking questions from you viewers at home. So if you'd like to have a question asked of Chief Rodriguez, please give us a call at 222-8041, and we'll get to as many of your questions as possible in the 30 minutes or so that we have for this program. Chief, first of all, welcome to this program. It's first appearance here at Channel 9.
Thank you, Oscar.
Glad to have you here, and we hope to see more of you in the future. As the city was out on their national search looking for a police chief, they made it fairly plain that they wanted their new chief to abide by a rather expensive and extensive study that was done by the Arthur Young consultants about police protection in the police department in San Antonio. Is that something did you have any hesitation about taking a job where you were having to inherit a situation where your plan was basically mapped out for you for the next couple of years at least?
Well, you know, I don't think that the city has indicated to me that I have to be, you know, rigid in my, you know, implementing the recommendations that were made on the Arthur Young study. I feel that the recommendations that were made were valid. They were in line with contemporary management, and perhaps at the time they were made, they were needed. So, you know, you can't argue with that. Mm-hmm. In looking at it, and by the way, I did look at the study before I came here, so I knew that it was there. And you can look at it in a couple ways. You see, I would have had to have done the same thing when I came here. I would have had to look at what was, you know, what the problems were, what I had to do about them, and set up some goals and so forth. This was done for me. Okay. But you see, I also have the benefit of someone else looking at the department and then evaluating it myself. So mm-hmm. I'm not displeased with that. There are some things that I feel are going to be done with from the study. However, there are some things there that I think we're going to modify, and we're going to change it a little bit, and perhaps as we look at more of the recommendations, we may just eliminate some of that. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure.
In the little over 2 months that you've been here, have you seen anything that radically differed from what the study recommended, or anything in your analysis of the situation that you would say, well, this doesn't seem to be what's needed, or what the study recommended doesn't seem to be what's needed? Is there anything that blatantly stands out?
Not blatantly, okay. Not blatantly. I think what you have to consider when you're talking about management studies is that, you know, when you talk about management, there are a number of ways to do the same thing. And you get one management consultant looking at it, and he'll want to say, let's do it this way, and we can vary that in some way, and that's what I'm looking at. So far, you know, we have been implementing just about all the recommendations. Those that we cannot, you know, that require a little time, maybe there's some legality involved, you know, we haven't been able to do that. Mm-hmm. So we're still looking at it. We're still looking at it.
I mentioned early on at the beginning of the program that some statistics about per capita spending here in San Antonio on police protection and the number of officers per citizens per capita are not flattering when compared to other large cities. And in an article a few months ago that you may or may not be familiar with, Texas Monthly called San Antonio's police department the worst of the big city departments in the state. On the surface of things, it would appear to be more than just a simple challenge for someone in your position who has made a career of law enforcement. It would seem more than just a simple challenge to come to San Antonio and head up such a department. What did you base your final decision on in accepting this job?
First of all, the article that you're talking about, I haven't seen. Okay. And I've been trying to get a copy of it. Nobody seems to have it. That's one. You know, this thing of coming to San Antonio with the idea that San Antonio had been labeled at a particular level in the law enforcement field. You know, much of what I read, much of what I see had to do mainly with problems of management, problems of administration and organization. But those are easy to deal with. You see, because what you do is you start applying some more contemporary management techniques. The thing that I think was more important is that there is a need to develop an attitude, all right? And that attitude has to be one of service, and that's, I think, the challenge. Law enforcement, after all, is a service, and the enforcement of laws is one small portion of what we do out there as law enforcement officers. So that's the focus of attention that I'm taking. The management study looked at the organization, looked at the deployment of personnel and so forth, and there were some things that had to be done. And I agree with it, and I don't see any problems with that. I don't feel that there are obstacles there that I can't handle.
So when you decided to take the job, it was with the attitude that you could instill that above all else that law enforcement is a service?
Well, don't we all feel that we can, you know?
One would hope so.
Yes.
Okay, we're talking with Police Chief Charles Rodriguez on tonight's edition of Perspective, and we're here live from the studio, so if you have questions, we're already starting to get quite a few, and if you planned on calling in a question, I would advise that you do it right now. Before we get to the first batch of questions, I want to talk to you a little bit about an article that appeared in the January issue of San Antonio Monthly, which you said you have read. You've probably got a number of copies of. It's called Crisis in the SAPD. It was written by Tom Bell, who is the editor of San Antonio Monthly. Not often do public figures, unless there's a blatant misquote or misrepresentation in the press, not often do you get to respond publicly to such extensive articles. Is there anything in here in particular that you would like to talk to? It's quite an extensive article about the police department.
You know, in looking at that article, the only thing I can tell you about it right now is that the total article, I didn't really like the approach that we used in writing that. There is some information in there that I think is inaccurate. I'm not too sure where it is and what it is, because I'd have to read the article over again in order to determine, you know, where that is. But there are some things there that are not verified, and I wasn't pleased with that at all.
There comes a time where you can decide to or decide not to pay attention to statistics, I guess. But the article does point out that San Antonio spends per capita about $45 per citizen on police protection when you look at the total city budget. And it's considerably less than Houston, Dallas, and even Austin. Is that an area of concern for you? Is it something that you think that the department needs to do, is have an increase in its budget for manpower, for equipment, for wages?
You know, this thing of manpower and per capita spending on law enforcement, and you compare cities, you know, and if it's in a pure sense, you really have nothing that you can say that you can compare, because what one city has as a problem and concerns itself with a problem, another city may not, you see. I think one of the issues here was the fact that we have, 1.7 or 0.6 officers per 1,000, whereas opposed to somewhere else they may have 2.
The national average is 2.1, it says.
Okay, well, when you start taking large organizations and looking at them from the standpoint of policemen ratio to citizens, you know, you have to take in crime rates, you got to take in call for services, you have to take in a lot of things that sometimes are a little different in every city. All right, so I don't always go on that completely. Now, the thing that we have here now is that we're looking at that. You understand that San Antonio is growing. If we have that and there is a need to increase our manpower, then we're going to probably do that. But to say that that's not right at this time, I don't know if I could say that directly.
Okay. If we have time, we'll come back to a couple of other points that I'd like to, but the point of this program is to have our viewers ask questions of you, and that's where we're going to start with. How about 2 policemen per patrol car? Especially on high crime areas in the city. I can't exactly read what that part says, but is that something that you think the city needs to do more of, have 2 policemen per car?
You know, the idea of 2 policemen per patrol car, especially during the hours of darkness, is a very standard thing in many police departments. Here in San Antonio, there probably are some areas where that might be required, but you're also talking about more expense. If we do it on the manpower that we have now, that means we're going to have less cars, you know, that are in the field that are visible, because you're going to have to put 2 men in 1 car. So yes, on the one hand, it is safer in some areas, but that's not applicable to all areas of the city. And it has to be looked at, and probably on a selective basis, or at a selected time of the day, we would put two-man cars, or 2 men in a car. We have to look at the crime rate in certain areas and then determine whether that is a better way to go. You see, what happens now is that in many instances the patrol cars don't work actually on their own. They are supposed to follow directions, and that is get their back up, all right? Sometimes that's not possible. However, the officer has the option to wait. See, I don't think that anybody is really saying you go in there and handle a situation that's dangerous.
By yourself.
By yourself. So there are two ways to look at it. Depends on who you talk to. Personally, I do go for a two-man car on a limited basis, maybe a combination of two, if we're willing to put out that much money.
Is there a public information office for questions regarding information on the police department? As I recall, that's one of the new additions to the police department.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't catch
the question was, is there a public information office for questions regarding information on the police department?
There is a public information officer that we're implementing now, and that will be dealing with the news media. But any time that you call the station, you know, and contact any of our officers, you should be able to get the information you need in order to have whatever business you want taken care of. So calling a particular office or a particular officer, you know, it should be all the same, but we do have a central point. We do have a central office that takes complaints.
Okay. Is it possible to take fingerprints or trace littering in the streets? Track down litter? Can litter bugs be tracked down legally?
Unless you catch them in the act, I doubt it.
It's hard.
Yes.
What is going to be your approach to the nonviolent crimes in San Antonio? That might be part of a larger question of exactly what sort of crime we are faced with here in San Antonio predominantly.
The nonviolent crimes, and I'm trying to, you know, there's a number of things there that you can call the stealing property nonviolent, unless it's a robbery with a gun, then it becomes violent. You know, we have to apply the rules to everybody. If there is an area where an individual has a particular problem, an illness or something, and commits a crime, that's one thing. But an individual that commits a crime and gets caught has to be treated just like everybody else. I don't know whether we're going to be more lenient. I don't know whether we're going to act in a special way in any one case, depending on the circumstances. See, we have to deal with each individual case.
What are the specific crime problems in this community that are faced by the department in carrying out its role?
Well, you know, we have all the usual traditional things: robberies, burglaries. We have thefts. We have assaults. And my observation has been that there is a tremendous amount of assaults in this area. Many of them are associated with drinking or narcotics, primarily drinking. The interesting thing about here in San Antonio is that you really don't have many of the problems that some of the bigger cities have. And this was interesting to me because in talking about gangs, for example, comparing other cities, you do not have a gang problem. You have a problem of young people getting together and getting obnoxious and creating some problems, but not a gang per se. So there's a problem of definition. You don't have the problem of people taking PCP here, which is prevalent in a lot of big cities, and that is a dangerous drug. That is really bad. So, and it creates other problems. It creates other, a need for further enforcement because of what it does. So, you have the standard everyday, and I hate to put it that way, but everyday crime, and there are many crimes in a particular field, in the field of assaults, but apart from some specific things, there aren't any. I don't feel, and I don't sense, and I don't see in the figures that there is a tremendous amount of crime here.
Okay. You did mention that you were kind of surprised by the assault rate or the assault numbers, and tied it into drinking. Could that be part of a plan to cut down on drunk drivers, more closer checking of drinking establishments? Well, there's been fears here in the past about regular problems at certain establishments that had liquor licenses, and the city has tried to deal with them somehow, taking their licenses away or taking some legal action. Is that something you think that the city needs to continue to do?
Well, in some areas, I'm sure that's true. You know, if you get an area where you have a bar every corner or every block, then you got problems. Sure. But I think the fact that drinking is allowed in the streets and drinking is allowed in cars, you know, tells you that you're going to have problems with drinking and the related situations that arise from drinking, disturbances, you know, and everything else.
How do you solve the statute of limitations on burglary cases?
I'm sorry?
How do you solve the statute of limitations on burglary cases?
The statute of limitations on... I don't quite understand that.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Once the statute runs out, are your hands tied for the most part?
Well, in most cases, yeah, in any kind of crime.
Okay.
Yes.
Why do they make it so hard, and I suppose I mean the police department, or no, maybe not. Why do they make it so hard on people to show proof of insurance, liability insurance in your car? You have to come down to court if you don't have proof. Why can't the policeman just call from the scene of wherever he has stopped a person for?
Well, you know, I suppose that the policeman can do that, but do you realize the amount of time that would involve? And I don't think at this point that it's the policeman's responsibility to do that. It may be, if it's simple enough, you know, if it's immediately available, the information is immediately available, then he should be able to do that and should do that. But if it's going to mean calling somebody and trying to locate someone, taking somebody home that may live on the other side of town, I don't think the policeman really has the time to do that in every case, and maybe it is something that can be looked at, but it's like not having your driver's license. You know, you forgot it at home. I suppose if we really wanted to be, you know, look at it in a positive way, we could follow people home and let them get their license, operator's license, and then we could verify it. But if we did that, we would spend a lot of time doing that. Better that they get the citation, show up in court, and let the court decide it. In many instances, I'm sure that they may not even get fined if they don't have a driver's license with them, or identification, or insurance.
Given the population and the area size of San Antonio as compared to somewhere like Los Angeles, where you came from, do you think the crime rate is higher here than Los Angeles? How do you propose to make it less in Los Angeles? It is not higher.
I don't think it's higher than Los Angeles, no.
Was that part of your decision to come here?
No, it wasn't. But it's interesting because the fact that I've had an opportunity to deal with a higher crime rate and more crimes, you know, and have that experience has given me the background to come here and deal with what we have here too. So, you know, experience is very important when you're dealing with law enforcement situations.
Why is there such a conflict between the police department and the city when other cities do not seem to have this? I don't know particularly what they're talking about. It could very well have to do with the ongoing negotiations between the Police Officers Association and the city of San Antonio. And that has escalated here, as I'm sure you know, over the past couple of years at negotiation time.
Well, you know, the thing that I found when I first came here regarding that, there was a lot of conflict, and there was some concern over my coming here, and much of it had to do with the fact that they were the police association was negotiating with the city. But I think when you have negotiations like that, I think it's happening all over. And every city has those same problems. If it's been visible here, it's probably because of the media rather than because of what's been going on. I got the impression here that every time someone says something, it's put in the media. And for example, my conflict, or it wasn't even conflict, it was my lack of interaction with the association really was exaggerated to some degree in some of the things that were written in the media. Because you know, what would happen is that one story would get out on one side, and then I'd get approached, and then I'd have to say something, and then they'd go and ask the other side, and really it wasn't to the extent that it seemed to be in the news media. I believe that.
How would you describe the relationship between yourself and the Police Officers Association at this point?
I think that they have the initial reaction to me was understandable. I think that's true. Anytime you bring somebody in, he's going to have to establish himself, and that's what I had to do, and that's what I'm doing now. Their reaction to me was one that's very common also, in that why not choose somebody from within? You know, we have talent, and we can handle it. Well, it didn't work out that way, and I just happened to be the visible signs of that. But there was no doubt in my mind that eventually more reasonable heads would prevail, and we would settle into something. And I have talked to the association president and his staff, and at the present time, we have a pretty good relationship. If anything comes up that's going to be a problem to them, I'll tell them, and they tell me the same thing now. So it was a matter of understanding.
And of course, that relationship is directly related to morale in the department, which has been said to be quite low. Do you think that's something that's going to be improvable?
I think it's improving now. I think morale is affected by conflict. And unfortunately, all this news media had created some divisiveness and conflict within the department. I think since we've settled down, I think that has a tendency to help morale. Now, morale is a very, it's kind of an ununderstandable thing. What is morale, and whether morale is really down is hard to say. Now, you can't confuse morale with complaining. You can complain and still not be low on morale. The city of San Antonio, the policemen of the city of San Antonio are doing their job, and that's a sign of good morale. Okay? So as far as griping and as far as complaining, I don't attribute that to low morale.
You, while on the topic of the media and morale and the Police Officers Association, you mentioned that on your last appearance on a live media program here in San Antonio, you said something that perhaps you wish you had said differently, or had been understood differently, or clarified it better, because it did make quite a bit of headlines, and that was your comment about the proposed filling of 2 assistant chief positions. The understanding was that the way it was interpreted was that you would prefer that those people not be members of the Police Officers Association, or that there might be a conflict of interest, I think, if they were members.
Yes.
Would you like to clear that up now?
Sure. I said that, but I also added, and I had to add this later, I guess, maybe I didn't say it on the radio show, was that I'm willing to take somebody from within the department, and I'm not excluding anyone from within the department. I said it might be better if that were the case, but that doesn't exclude people from the department. My concern, and the thing that I was focusing on, was that I want to have the benefit of selecting my own people, whether it's from inside the department or outside the department. That's the only issue that I have. I want to be able to say, if I want to bring somebody that has special qualities from outside that I need, that can work with me, I want to be able to do that. If I find that individual in the department, fine. That's fine.
Okay. As opposed to being a civil service position that would... Is that the difference that I'm understanding? The difference between you being able to hire anyone you want, or the city having to open it up as a civil service position?
Well...
The power of appointment, is that what we're talking about?
Yes. Okay. And actually the power going outside.
Okay.
Right? That I can select anybody that I want.
Okay. The article, again, in San Antonio Monthly talked about this point, and I'm going to quote one line that says, Getting out of the Police Officers Association is something Chief Rodriguez has made mandatory for anyone really expecting to reach the top levels of police management.
That's a tremendous statement, isn't it? I don't think that's true. I just clarified that. Mandatory. I don't think I've said anything mandatory since I've been here, other than we get together and get the management study implemented.
Okay. Another question from a viewer. What is the procedure for filing a complaint against the police department? How can a private citizen contact the police chief to expound on this further? I'm sure that's something you wouldn't want everyone who had a complaint to do, but right, why don't we talk about the first part?
We have an internal affairs unit that people can call, and they are charged with reviewing any and all complaints, any and all incidents that involve law enforcement officers that are of a questionable nature. The idea is to clarify it, because in many instances, some of the investigations we do of an administrative nature are not necessarily things that we're going to act on because we find out that they were not justified. But on the other hand, if we do find that there is a need for some kind of discipline, we would do that. So our internal affairs people are the people that they should call. However, they should be able to stop any officer and say, I want to make a complaint, and either get directions where to make that complaint, or the officer himself can, handle it to some degree there, get a name and so forth.
You probably know that last year the city police department spent a good deal of money and manpower in providing protection to the Ku Klux Klan during 2 rallies that were held here. The question that was called in was, is the KKK going to be allowed the large support from the police department as was last year? Why are they given the support? I guess, first of all, they were issued a parade permit by the city, and at that point you have to follow instructions.
Yes, we have to follow instructions, I wasn't here at the time, but unless we can establish a real reason why they can't parade, you know, they're almost entitled to a parade permit as anybody else, unless it can be established they're going to create a lot of problems. And, you know, even if we know they are, and it doesn't matter who the parade participants are, you know, we have to deal with it on an individual basis again, and certainly we're not going to allow that if we can determine ahead of time that it's going to be a hazard, you know, to the public.
Okay. Why is it required for a police cadet to take a lie detector test when it's not admissible in court? Is that part of standard procedure for police cadets?
Yeah, you know, this thing of lie detector and the fact that the cadets take them, or the applicants take them, has nothing to do with courts. We're not going to submit that to a court. We're not going to use any of the information other than to determine whether, in fact, he says what he says he is, and whether what he says is true. And there's some leeway there. You know, there's some leeway there. I don't think we use that in order to exclude everybody. It's rather to determine whether the individual has a background that is going to be a problem to him if he comes into law enforcement, or whether it's going to be a problem to the law enforcement agency.
Okay. Well, while on the topic of cadets, let's talk about recruitment a little bit. Are you confident of the department's ability to attract good recruits for this department? Many cities offer more money, better benefits. As a matter of fact, as we speak, there's a 2-day recruiting conference going on in San Marcos where law enforcement agencies from around Texas, and in some instances from outside of the state, are recruiting the sorts of people that you would hope probably to have in your department.
Well, we're recruiting the same kind of people. You know, if they're going to, we're San Marcos, I didn't realize that, to recruit, then
the university there has a law enforcement training.
Apparently they're having trouble getting recruits, right? Yeah. At the present time, our department has a class going that is probably going to put us up to strength. So as far as recruits are concerned, we have people that are applying. As a matter of fact, I understand today that we had a number of background investigations that we haven't completed yet, so we have a waiting list. So, you know, whether we're getting the recruits or not, I think that would probably show that we probably are.
One last question, because we only have about a minute left, and you may need to be brief, but this article referred to the Police Officers Association bargaining not only for wages, but for equipment and manpower as well. Isn't that something that's a prerogative of the department itself and the chief?
Well, it should be. And I guess you touched on a situation there that is unique to this city, and that is that there are some things apparently that have been bargained off in the past that the chief of police or the administration has to deal with in a bargaining situation. Yeah.
Okay, we ran out of time, and we have many more questions that we weren't able to get to, so perhaps we'll have you back as soon as we can.
That was very quick. The time went very fast.
Thank you to the City of San Antonio's new police chief, Charles Rodriguez, for being on our program tonight. Thank you for calling in your questions. Good night.
Residents of the city's near west side are sick and tired of being prisoners in their own home. Tonight, angry citizens met with Police Chief Charles Rodriguez to devise a plan to bring crime in that area under control. Kelly Craig is standing by with a live report. Kelly?
Deborah, tonight's meeting was attended mostly by West End senior citizens. They have two goals. One, to seek beefed up police protection, and to form a neighborhood crime watch. Break-ins, rapes, and purse snatchings have become almost commonplace in the West End, so says these scared and angry residents. Tonight, they shared their horror stories in a community meeting. Many say they now arm themselves with guns.
I've had 3 burglaries in one attempt, and I was only asking that we would have some police protection around here because I feel that we need it.
Whenever you rob, nobody ever sees it. When the lady on the corner was raped, nobody saw it. So I don't know what the police can do, but we do need some help. Probably we need some advice.
After hearing reports, a representative from the city's crime prevention unit urged citizens to get angry, get together, and file reports. Chief Charles Rodriguez agreed.
You as residents in this area can be the eyes and ears for the policeman that's out in the field. But you have to get angry. You have to say, you know what, this is my property, this is what I want to do, this is how I'm going to act.
And with me now is Angel Perez. He is the chairperson of ROD, the community group who organized tonight's meeting. Mr. Perez, if you would just step in here with me, what was the feeling after meeting with Charles Rodriguez on the part of citizens?
I was very satisfied that he will beef up the patrol in this neighborhood, and as of tonight, we've joined the ranks of a neighborhood watch.
Well, congratulations, and we wish you good luck.
Thank you.
This is Kelly Craig with Live Watch 12. Back to you, Deborah.
All right, Kelly, thank you. We'll see if they get any results. Rick?
Today is the day a bit of the Irish tickles all of us. It is, of course, St. Patrick's Day, and here in San Antonio, hundreds celebrated with a parade down Houston Street. Though the Grand Marshal was Police Chief Charles Rodriguez, the top dogs of this parade were these guys. What else but Irish wolfhounds? The Alamo City Pipe Band followed close behind in full regalia. They sported kilts, tams, and of course, those magical bagpipes. And what would a parade be without Shriners, and lots of them? This is probably the only time of year you'll see them in green lame. And what would St. Paddy's Day be without an Irish melody? Well, some parade spectators showed us there's a little bit of the Irish in all of us.
When Irish eyes are smiling,
now bring a melody.
That's all I know.
And when Irish eyes are laughing, when Irish hearts are laughing, sure twill, I don't know. And when Irish eyes are smiling,
sure they'll steal your heart away.
The parade wound down at the Alamo. There were no major traffic problems reported. Police Chief Charles Rodriguez today asked citizens to support police by being their eyes and ears. Paul Schaefer reports on a special tour of the city the chief was taken on today.
At the corner of Santa Monica and Michigan, there was a murder about 3 months ago.
Members of the Metropolitan Congregational Alliance took Police Chief Rodriguez and Captain James Robbins of the Police Community Relations Section on a special sightseeing tour of the city today. Its aim was to point out problem crime areas like this car wash in Colonies North, where a security guard is required during football season because it becomes a high school hangout for drinking and smoking pot. Burglaries are another concern. Even churches get hit.
The treasurer thought he had hidden the Sunday offering. However, while he was meeting with the elders upstairs, someone found that money and took it.
A couple of weeks ago, the pastor and the assistant pastor caught some kids attempting to set the building on fire.
The 3-hour tour took in areas from the far north side to the southeast side of the city. And what will the chief do to change the picture?
You know, we'll have to look at what is going on and where that fits into the whole scheme of things, but it certainly gives me some insight. It gives me some information from which to make some decisions on.
He did tell the tour group the most effective way of solving crime is from citizen support, telling them, we need your eyes and ears to let us know what is going on out there. Paul Schaefer, News Center 4.
Chief really getting a good feel for the city now.
He's been out quite a bit in the community.
Well, because of complaints.
You know, neighborhood crimes like that seem to be happening all too often, and police in our city are now starting to talk about ways to better protect you and me.
Well, one idea that they're talking about, seem to be serious about, as a matter of fact, is something they've tried before, something that did not work out. But as Jimmy Martinez tells us, Police Chief Rodriguez is willing to give police substations another chance.
This police service center on the Northwest Side was criticized by a police management study a couple of years ago. The report said it's in a bad location because it's not close enough to residential areas. The study also showed that while substations are good for big city police departments, San Antonio first needed to get its own house in order. Some recommended changes are already taking place, and Police Chief Charles Rodriguez says he's now ready to develop area stations. The chief told his patrol officers today that he wants the patrol, traffic, and investigations divisions to move out. Rodriguez says citizens have told him they want the department to go out to the people.
The indications I get from the people in this city is that they're getting too distant from us because we're so centralized here downtown. People are hesitating to come down. They feel it's too crowded. They feel they don't have the opportunity to park and so forth.
Rodriguez says the current facility can be turned into an area substation during the next year. A second North Side station would have to be built in District 10 since the voters approved 2 years ago a bond sale for that purpose. The chief says his goal is to have a third area station within 5 years, assuming there's money to pay for it. He says that station will go on the southeast side. Jibby Martinez, News Center 4.
Things are changing down at the police headquarters. Police Chief Charles Rodriguez is letting his officers know what those changes will involve. Jimmy Martinez says the chief also did something to the officers today that had not been done in a long time.
Chief Rodriguez is here this morning. Everybody will line up for inspection.
For the first time in recent history, a police chief conducted the officers' monthly inspection, but he gave them a chance to get even.
And you get a chance to look at me up in my uniform, and you see I have a new coat.
The chief wore his newly designed dress uniform for the occasion. As he worked his way down the line, the rather informal inspection included icebreakers, questions about weight, hair, name tags, and of course his new coat.
I like this coat. Sure. What do you think of this coat? I like it.
But the chief says he was easy on them today, promising to do this twice a year and be a little tougher in the future. The chief also used the inspection this morning to bring the officers up to date on what's going on within the department. The chief says it's hard to change things in a place that's so structured, but he told them about changes. Plans to add more substations, move the police academy, have performance evaluations of the officers, and streamline procedures.
A lot of times the policy change we can't live with in the field. So maybe we need to get a bunch of patrolmen together or something like that.
Afterwards, the officer said,
"That's part of his job. He's supposed to do that."
Well, this negotiation over with, things are going to start changing. I guess everybody will start working together.
Jibby Martinez, News Center 4.
Well, in the middle of all of the last-minute politicking in the elections, thousands of Texans spent this day celebrating Cinco de Mayo. Randy Beamer takes a look at San Antonio's big Cinco de Mayo parade and exactly what this holiday means.
Around the Alamo, it was an unusually busy day. As word spread among the tourists, some kind of big historic parade was about to start.
Pretty excited about the parade today?
No.
Do you know what it's about?
No, I haven't heard anything about it.
Nevertheless, tourists and locals massed by the hundreds, then thousands, as the Cinco de Mayo parade was beginning.
Smile, ladies! Come on, let's see some peace! Smile!
What does Cinco de Mayo mean to you?
I don't know what it means. Fiesta? Independence for America.
Cinco de Mayo is actually a Mexican holiday commemorating an 1862 victory over Napoleon's French troops. And some people did know that.
As a mark of Mexican independence, as I recall from the French.
But a parade, even in front of the Alamo, is not much about history. It's about culture. All facets of culture.
There's nothing like being a lowrider all the time. I like it. I'm the escort to Junior Miss Navy. You look so beautiful. Smile.
It's colorful, got a lot of lowriders in it.
Well, I like the people popping and well, I ain't like too many of the trucks that go by.
There were even some blatant publicity seekers in the crowd who knew just how to go about it.
Something different, something unusual.
Thought it was great. Right? Good.
As it all ended, absolutely everyone reported a good time and increased business except for this sunglass salesman, who was a little disappointed with the turnout.
There ain't no people. It's a beautiful day out. No one wants to see a parade. What can I say?
Randy Beamer, Channel 5 Eyewitness News.
At home, members of the Ku Klux Klan have been told by the city to pick another day if they want to march here. The Klan filed for a parade permit last week when they were turned away from the Alamo on May Day. City Hall reporter Kathy Teague has the story.
No one knew quite what to think last week when the Daughters of the Republic of Texas stood up to the Ku Klux Klan. As modern-day defenders of the Alamo, they told a small Klan gathering to either change their shirts or leave the historic site. Klansmen left in a frustrated huff. Their mission to protect the Alamo from May Day communists was over before it ever began.
The idea that they're denying us our rights because they're criminals, and we can't put up with that.
So their efforts would not go down in history as being a complete failure. The KKK went to the city to ask for a parade permit to make their point.
This country was made for white people. That's all there is to it.
When the Klan marches, it's not only a media attraction, but an expensive event for the city. Last year, the security bill to protect the robed marchers was over $100,000. But city officials had another reason for saying no this time.
Based on the date that they want, which is June the 2nd, based on that and the fact that there's going to be other events going on, we're going to have to deny that for that date.
Klan leaders say they haven't heard from the city yet, but when they do, Charles Lee told Newswatch 12 that his group will see if it's a legitimate excuse. If so, the Klan plans on setting a new March date. If not, then they will go through the courts to push for the right to take their cause to the streets. Kathy Teague, Newswatch 12.
Young children usually get their images of police officers from television shows, where police are often portrayed as bigger-than-life heroes. Mary Walker today visited with a group of North Side youngsters who have come to know and love a more human side of our men in blue.
When they wake up, they don't know if they're going to be shot. I think they're nice, and that's real brave for them to do that to protect us.
They have officers on the way.
These Sunset Hills Elementary School youngsters have had a love affair with our city's police officers for 3 years now, and doing something special for the men in blue just comes naturally.
We're giving them coffee, donuts, and donuts. We are doing this to make them feel wanted.
3 years ago, they made Valentines for the police officers' lockers. Last year, they designed and sold bumper stickers raising $1,500 for the Policemen's Welfare Fund. This year, they saved up enough money to serve coffee and donuts to the officers throughout the day.
It's kind of feels good to have the kids come around and just hug you a little bit and show, you know, like, actually in their way show love.
Have you seen a change in the image of these children of police officers?
Most definitely. Most definitely. At first there was fear that they might get in trouble, you know, just because he was there. And now they greet him with open arms, and they'll often yell, "Hey, men in blue, we love you."
And the men return that love by passing out special wristbands for youngsters to safely carry keys, warning them that keys on chains around their necks can be dangerous. So there was a lot of giving at Sunset Hills Elementary School today, but this time, the men in blue were more than happy to be the proud receivers. Mary Walker, Newswatch 12.
An 84-year-old grandmother still in the hospital tonight while higher-ups in the police department investigate other officers' delay in coming to her aid.
Her son-in-law and a state lawmaker are asking the police chief for some reasons tonight why this happened, but Beverly Hinton tells us there are still no answers.
84-year-old Grace Herring needed 100 stitches in her mouth to close a gash left by a burglar who attacked her last night. She said she called 911 for help, but no police help came for 13 minutes. She was beaten and robbed. Tonight, State Representative Frank Tejeda met with Police Chief Charles Rodriguez for some answers, and after an hour and a half, he was satisfied with the police investigation.
We were concerned that incidents like this do not happen in the future.
Chief Rodriguez says he is sure that the late action was not intentional. He's investigating to determine whether it was a computer or human error and looking for ways to correct the problem.
But we're still looking. We're still going to look at some more procedures, and we don't know specifically what we're going to do yet.
The meeting also included City Councilman Frank Wing. They're like to hate it because Herring is their constituent. Her son-in-law, Bill Leffler, also left satisfied with the outcome. He told us Herring will decide about taking legal action after the investigation of the incident is completed. Beverly Hinton, News Center 4.
Some years ago, a national magazine dealing with law enforcement recognized one of our city's police officers. Years have passed, and in that era we didn't have any particular way to recognize positive accomplishments beyond visitors to the community, and so no action was taken. It's been brought to my attention in recent years, and I've seen the documentation on this man's work. And it's my pleasure today to ask Police Officer Frank Castillon, Lieutenant Castillon, to please come forward and be recognized by a grateful city for his accomplishments. Those of you who have lived in San Antonio for a long time, and just a few years ago, San Antonio had the characteristics of a small city as opposed to a big city, and everybody knew everybody, and in particular in the police department, the good police officers, or at least the police officers who everybody knew as tough, demanding police officers, were well known. Toto Salas, for example, and Bob Cruz, and a lot of others who just had a name. One of the good men, one of the clean names, one of the family reputations in police work was a Castillon name. And it's just very, very well known. And now that our city's a little bigger, perhaps the name doesn't mean as much to newcomers to the community. People who've been here 5 years or even 10 years might not know Frank Castillon. But I think when we have a man like this who's given so much to the city over the years, not only of himself, but his family. You have a son in the department?
Two sons.
Two sons in the department. Brother?
No brother. I have two sons.
Two sons that are serving in the department. I know one of them. He was on street patrol downtown for a while, and now he's a detective, isn't he?
He's a sergeant.
He's a sergeant.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, let me read this proclamation. Proclamation to Frank Castillon. This extraordinary city has earned its position among America's unique cities because of the many contributions made in the past by special people like you. Our present city is nothing more and nothing less than the sum of all of those individual efforts. Mayor and members of the City Council take this opportunity to commend you for 22 years of service as detective in the San Antonio Police Homicide Department. Your invaluable and distinguished accomplishments were cited by Detective Magazine and recognized you as National Police Officer of the Month, thus bringing honor to the department and to the city of San Antonio. At this time, the Mayor and City Council call to the attention of all the people of San Antonio your contributions and proclaim you a benefactor of this community, benefactor de la comunidad. This community takes great pride and expresses gratitude, and you should always know that you've joined the ranks of those eminent San Antonians who've made this city such an exceptional place with such a bright future. I know the police chief, our police chief Rodriguez, would like to stand by you as we make this presentation. And just from the bottom of my heart, speaking as somebody that first learned your name in grade school, not because I was in any trouble, but just because folks knew Frank Castillon back then as the picture of decency and law enforcement, a gentleman always in the law enforcement community of San Antonio.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, sir, for your work.
Thank you, Mayor.
Join me. I know you would like to in being able to present this to you. Really appreciate your work.
Thank you.
Appreciate your work. You brought your sons up the right way also.
I hope so.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
No, thank you.
Thanks, Frank. There you go.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Castillon?
Yes, sir.
Very glad to see you.
Congratulations and thank you for all your work all these years.
Congratulations, you deserve it. Good to see you again.
Thank you very much, and I remember you well.
Mr. Webb.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. Nice to meet you. I understand that the chief and Carlos Garcia of KCRO Radio.
He came.
That's right. You're right. That's years ago. You're right.
KCRO.
Sorry. La M Grande. Have a presentation to make.
There is a plaque that we would like to present Frank with. And you know, when I first came here, not knowing anybody, And not being familiar with, you know, all the detectives and so forth, I readily heard about Frank. He's now working in another profession, and I kind of thought, you know, this is the kind of guy I would have liked to have been like. You know, the guy that really did the work. And it's really my pleasure and my privilege to present you with this plaque that is part of the recognition that KFHM radio has tried to generate here. And what it says, for those of you that can't see it from back there, it says Special Recognition Award to Frank Castillon for his dedicated service to the community of San Antonio as one of the top detectives in the nation. Not just San Antonio or Texas, in the nation. Presented by KFHM Radio, San Antonio, Texas, June 1984. And I did see the articles and some of the cases that Frank has been involved in the past. I happened to see some of that past literature, detective magazines and stuff, and it's really impressive. And I'm very proud to present you with that. Thank you. At least be the individual that gives it to you. Thank you. Thank you, Frank.
Detective, would you care to, as soon as we get some photographs here, would you care to add a couple of words? If you've met the sons, they take after their father in every respect. Their police work, appearance, grooming, just straight up young men. Very impressive to see a family that way.
I have not much to say. I want to thank you, the mayor and the rest of the city council. I spent 30 years, or almost 30 years, on the police department. 22 years of those, of course, were in working homicide. Most of the fellows that I worked homicide with now are deceased. You mentioned Toto Salas.
Was he in homicide?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, he worked juvenile.
Yeah.
But juvenile and homicide, more or less. At that time, we had a lot of gang wars going on.
Right. Toto Salas used to go around to the schools and talk about the weapons, etc. Had pictures of people that today might even be recognizable in the community. Good.
That's right.
Look over at Frank Wing. Don't look over at Frank Wing, would you?
But anyway, this trophy and the proclamation and so forth, I thank you, and I think that all members of the police department deserve it at the time that I was working. I didn't work by myself. We worked as a team. Thank you, gentlemen, all of you.
Thank you for your work. You kept the department clean and kept this city clean. This is not a city that's been penetrated by the mob or corruption. This is not a city that has been penetrated by drug organizations. This is a city that has been kept clean. And by standards of big cities, this is a clean town. And part of it is because we've had some clean police officers. You've been one of those over the years. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Here in San Antonio, the chief of police tonight told a group of Woodlawn Lake residents that if drinking is banned in several city parks, it could help solve some of their problems. Residents who live near Woodlawn Lake have been complaining about the traffic congestion and drunken rowdiness that occur every weekend in and around their neighborhood park. So tonight, residents met with Chief Charles Rodriguez. He says his department will work with them to find out when the incidents usually occur, and then will send a patrol unit through the area at about that time.
What can be done in that?
And if nothing else, at least the people that are causing the congestion and the young people that are drinking and relieving themselves in the street will know that we have some concern.
He also urges residents to support the ordinance that would ban drinking in several city parks. Rodriguez says at least that way, drinking might be done more discreetly and people might be less likely to create disturbances.
You know, it's not always easy to protect our children, especially when you don't know where they are during the day. Well, now there is a new center in San Antonio that will help steer kids on the street in the right direction, kids who don't know where else to go. Beverly Hinton has the story.
You're around downtown and I running around and I but not no more.
This teenager wants to change his life, as might some of his peers still on the street taking drugs with no place to go for help. But that has all changed. A drop-in center opened at St. Mary's Church tonight. Its clients are runaways and children under the age of 19 with problems. Here they can relax for a while, then they are counseled and directed.
Look at themselves, their self-worth, their values in life.
Many of those who support this drop-in center were here for the opening. Police Chief Charles Rodriguez says this will help the department by putting wandering children in good hands.
You see, if we keep them in the station, well, we have to sit on them, we have to sit with the young people, and that just takes people out of the field. So this is going to be tremendous. We should probably have more of these.
Life on the streets can be pretty bleak. Now the St. Mary's Drop-In Center offers kids a place to go. And this is not their only alternative. There's another center in the works right now that offers even more services than this one. All they need to do is take advantage of it.
I think, the center might help me too. I hope everyone else come down here, they just at least come down and try it out.
Beverly Hinton, News Center 4.
San Antonio's police department now has 32 new officers on the force, and they're examples of what's being called a new breed of police officer. The story tonight from Jesse DeGoyado.
Lord, give them the courage when they are in danger. Give them the strength as our defenders. Give them the gentleness when they help them.
No doubt these men and women will encounter life and death situations, but like more and more police officers these days, they're being taught resorting to physical means is just one way to enforce the law.
We want to instill in our new people the philosophy of service, of which law enforcement is one aspect of it.
These cadets have learned more than just rules and regulations. They've been taught how to handle stress, public relations, even constitutional law. According to a police department spokesman, academy graduates are older, better educated, and are highly motivated.
It was tougher than I thought it would be, but it's been worth all the effort and pain that I put into it.
It's a lot of hard work that we all put into it, and we're going to go out there and do the best we can.
Police officer.
Now that they've graduated, they become rookies. They'll be riding with experienced police officers, their first real test of nearly 6 months of training. Jesse Degollado, Newswatch 12.
The outcry over those problems at our parks has prompted Police Chief Charles Rodriguez now to meet with neighborhood groups. He's trying to work out a solution. Those meeting opportunities have been a priority for Rodriguez since he came here 7 months ago. Rodriguez says neighborhood problems, even gang-related problems, aren't as bad here as he has seen in other cities. During the first in a new series of weekly press briefings, Rodriguez told reporters he wants folks here to be able to maintain confidence in the city's police force.
The public thinks very highly of this department, and that's because it's in my eyes, it's a good department, and it's probably had some just management problems in the past that we're dealing with now.
Rodriguez says his relationship now with the Police Officers Association has gotten better. He says he's trying to stabilize the department with a 5-year plan and by keeping up with management changes recommended in last year's analysis of the SAPD. East Side neighbors now are pressuring Mayor Henry Cisneros to do something about the crime, the drugs, and the prostitution taking place in that part of town. This morning, members of the East Side Alliance took the mayor and Police Chief Charles Rodriguez on a tour of their high-crime neighborhoods. They pointed out everything from vacant lots and abandoned houses to so-called drug alleys and prostitution hangouts.
We need for him to know firsthand what it is to live on the East Side and have to put up every day what he's going to see today.
We don't know whether it's cosmetic or not, but we'll be watchdogging it to make sure it's just not a cosmetic happening.
Alliance members said that after their first meeting with city officials last month, there were some improvements. Nonetheless, they intend to take a similar tour later in the summer to see if the mayor's commitment to East Side development pays any results.
What do you do about all the drunken bums walking the streets downtown? Well, our city's crackdown against public beer drinking and loitering is spreading from our parks to downtown streets tonight. Last month, the City Council made it illegal to drink alcoholic beverages in 5 of our public parks. Tonight, the council is banning drinking downtown. But Jibby Martinez tells us police may have a lot of trouble enforcing the new law.
The problem is folks hanging around, drinking, sometimes causing trouble for tourists. Citizens waiting for buses have complained about others who use bus benches to do their drinking. Downtown merchants don't like it either. The City Council has decided not to put up with it anymore.
But I think we can scare the heck of a lot of people who have been violating or who have been
either loitering, congregating, drinking their beverages, and then pestering people.
They are scaring the loiterers by passing a new law. Beginning in 10 days, you can be fined up to $200 if you drink in the downtown area. There are exceptions. You can drink during festivals like Fiesta and the Folklife Festival, and you can drink on the Riverwalk. Signs will be posted to warn citizens and tourists of the new law. But Police Chief Charles Rodriguez is worried about enforcement. How do you prove that someone is drinking an alcoholic beverage? He says it will take more manpower.
Yeah, I don't encourage our officers to drink or taste or anything like that. You can smell it. The smell will tell you whether it's alcohol. As to the content, you know, that would have to be analyzed, and I think that would add to what we have to do with enforcing the ordinance.
But he says just having the new law will make loiterers take their drinks somewhere else. Officials here at City Hall say they expect to have problems enforcing the new ordinance, so they say they'll be giving citizens a break, issuing warning tickets until everyone gets used to the new law. Jibby Martinez, News 4, San Antonio.
San Antonio police will continue to patrol Mayor Cisneros' West Side neighborhood following 2 separate threatening calls within a week. Police Chief Charles Rodriguez confirmed the fact that both crank calls, were taken seriously at the city's emergency switchboard. According to the operators at the 911 number, the anonymous caller in each instance referred to Cisneros' safety. The most recent incident was this past Sunday when someone called in saying the mayor was dead. At least one of the calls is thought to be politically motivated because of the timing involved.
I believe it was the night before Mondale and Ferrero got here, and so we put some security around his home, rather to be safe than to look back and say, well, we should have done this.
No one knows if the calls are related since no motive was mentioned, but the chief says the heightened security will be kept up indefinitely to keep any callers from making good on threats.
San Antonio police officers are going to start warning people who violate that new city ordinance against drinking on public streets and property down in the downtown business district. Newswatch 12's Mary Walker has more.
People drinking on public streets or property downtown will be given warnings by police officers until September 1st, when the ordinance actually goes into effect. The intent of that ordinance is to rid downtown streets of drinkers who loiter there and create problems for tourists and the general public. After September 1st, officers will issue citations along with a warning that the violation is to cease. If there is still a problem, those causing it will be arrested.
Not trying to categorically just stop the drinking altogether initially. I don't think we'll be able to do that. I think we've got to do it gradually. We will be enforcing the rules at some time, in the future, a little more consistently, with a lot of discretion.
Rodriguez says that discretion will also be used during downtown festivals and carnivals. Meanwhile, he says the city is looking into the possibility of housing people arrested on public intoxication charges in a facility other than the Bexar County Jail. He believes that 60% of all arrests made within the course of a year involve drunks.
The only thing is that we have so many public intoxicated people that we bring in that we have to have another program in order to deal with that so that we wouldn't have to put them into the county jail. And that's going to be through a private contract.
Talks are not yet finalized, but Rodriguez says plans for the new facility could come together by October 1st. Mary Walker, Newswatch 12.
The San Antonio Police Department is running better than ever, or at least so say the brass, thanks to an efficiency review from an outside consultant. Today, during his weekly news conference, the police chief, Charles Rodriguez, took time out to brag about his troops since the latest management study turned up good news. 2 years ago, the research firm of Arthur Young was hired to overhaul policy down at the department to make sure taxpayers are getting their money's worth. The majority of suggested improvements were soon enacted for better usage of manpower. Rodriguez says the follow-up study by the same company was favorable.
The attitude of the men have been good. My immediate management level personnel have been, really great. After an initial bumpy start, I think they've all committed to doing what had to be done, and we've done it.
On Thursday, the chief will share officially the good news with the City Council, which approved that survey in the first place.
The library, the fire, and the police departments all at City Hall today, all asking for more money. The timing couldn't have been better for the police, at least. They've received a good report card from an outside firm that has been looking into the police department. Now, 2 years ago, the consultants issued 288 recommendations for improving the police operations. So far, 3/4 of those proposals are in place. The result is that the department's community relations have improved, especially in minority neighborhoods where there were some problems a couple of years back. Also, the redeployment of manpower is working, so there are more officers out on the streets during bad crime periods. There are still not enough police officers on the streets, though, period. Now, the proposed city budget will help take care of some of that with the addition of 42 new officers. Overall, the police chief tells us the department's in good condition, but he believes they do need some firm direction.
It means that we better get hot on everything we need. More people, more equipment, image, everything.
The city council says it will probably take 2 or even 3 years to get the chief all the manpower he needs.
Can you
The San Antonio Police Department has gone through a lot of changes in the last year and a half, all brought on by a study commissioned by the City Council. The study recommended close to 300 changes aimed at improving the police department. Today, the authors of the report returned to grade the department's progress. Frank Guetta reports.
The evaluation handed to City Council members this afternoon is at least encouraging, perhaps even glowing. The study had recommended 288 changes within the department in a 5-year period, but in less than 2 years, 72% of the recommendations have already been acted on. The evaluation concludes the department is better managed, operational services have been improved, and support systems enhanced. City officials are pleased.
The evaluation suggested the department was becoming more self-analytical, more proactive. It was beginning to react to problems as they came up as opposed to ignoring them.
The department's major accomplishment, according to the report, was the redeployment of police, placing more officers on patrol at peak call times in high-crime areas. Shortcomings, there are a few. The evaluation recommends more attention to resolving computer inaccuracies, better recruiting, and more manpower. The evaluation could not have come at a better time, because just today the City Council began reviewing the police department's budget. Police Chief Charles Rodriguez is asking for an additional 42 officers, and he says the evaluation can only help.
I think it's already helped me. I think they've already looked at it, and I think it has helped me. I think they're very receptive to it.
Frank Guerra, Channel 5 Eyewitness News.
Well, it may not have been as big as the Texas Folklife Festival or as lively as Fiesta, but it was still a lot of fun, and its proceeds will go to a very worthy cause. We're talking about City Fest 84 that started early this morning and ran through this evening. The festival is the only fundraiser for the city employees' emergency fund, which provides them with financial assistance. The annual event, open to the public, featured lots of good food, live entertainment, and arts and craft, and some very toasty temperatures, right?
Hundreds of runners took to the streets of downtown San Antonio this morning for the 5K run. This race kicked off the second annual City Employees Fundraising Festival, appropriately called City Fest 84. All sorts of runners turned out, including Police Chief Charles Rodriguez, who finished with a conservative time. A few hours later, City Fest was well underway with food booths and arts and crafts.
Proceeds are going to go to our Employee Assistance Fund, which will be available for city employees who need some help, and it's kind of a self-help effort. It gives the people a chance to get out and socialize a little bit.
Fox says they plan on making this a tradition in our city.
The San Antonio Police Department's latest crackdown on prostitution has been fairly successful, according to the Chief of Police. Over the weekend, SAPD vice officers wrapped up the 4th raid in 9 weeks for an arrest total of 100 sex-for-hire suspects. During his weekly news conference, Chief Rodriguez defended the department's policy of arresting the customer as well as the prostitute in the effort to clean up the city's most notorious neighborhoods.
For a little bit, but I think what will happen is
The crime is committed by 2 people. In the past, we have focused on the prostitute. In this case, we're focusing on both. And there are some groups that feel that's more of a fair approach.
Rodriguez told reporters he has no second thoughts about devoting manpower to the vice cleanup because of the variety of other crimes that he says are attracted by prostitution.
Good news for the police department, though. It looks like recruiting is finally paying off. 52 cadets, that's the largest number in department history, begin training next month. And something else that the chief is pleased with, up until now it's been tough to get women and minorities to join up. But now he says in this new class, 7 out of every 10 of the recruits are minorities. Nevertheless, the chief says minority recruitment would be easier if he could go out of the city.
The council feels that we should recruit from San Antonio. And I think they've said that and they've mentioned that in the past. My feeling is that we're missing a big boat, part of the boat by not going south. I think there are a lot of potential recruits for us here.
The chief also says the toughest challenge for the department is keeping the cadets on the force. Many often leave for better paying jobs.
San Antonio's police chief says the department is working hard to hire more minorities and women. And to prove it, he released a rundown of the newest cadet class during a news conference today. Charles Rodriguez says not only will the 52-member class be the largest in the history of the police department, but well over half the enrollees are either black, Hispanic, or women, or both. Chief Rodriguez says the makeup of the class reflects the department's efforts to enhance the affirmative action plan for the city. The chief's statements today were in part a response to City Councilman Joe Webb's recent observation that few minorities and women were making it through the cadet classes. Chief Rodriguez says the department is trying to find out why.
What we can do at this time to begin, in this process is to look at the selection process, who's coming in, follow it through, and then determine where we're letting off. Where is that obstacle that's eliminating these people?
Chief Rodriguez also said today he has scheduled a meeting tomorrow with all female members of the police department, kind of a give and take session to see how the women are faring and what lies ahead for them in the SAPD.
Officials at City Hall are pointing out the high marks they've received from consultants who are reviewing the changes being made at the police department. Now, the city is trying to show that even in their weakest area, things are getting better. City Hall reporter Kathy Teague is in the newsroom with a look at the effort to get minorities on the force. Kathy?
Well, Deborah, nothing changes overnight, but the city found out recently that its record for hiring minority police officers has not changed in 3 years. Now they are trying to prove that the problem is not going to be ignored.
Ideally, a police force is supposed to reflect the makeup of the community it serves. But in a town where Anglos are technically a minority, more than 60% of those on the San Antonio force are white. That's a sore spot in a city that's trying to improve its affirmative action record. The first step comes next week when a new police cadet training class begins. Of the 52 cadets, 21 are white, 28 are Hispanic, and 3 are black.
Numbers can be read many different ways, and the city is encouraged by what it reads. But if you go to this neighborhood, you'll hear a different story. People read the numbers and say only one thing, that the city is still not doing enough to make sure that East Side blacks are becoming police officers.
City Councilman Joe Webb says it's not enough just to recruit blacks. The force has got to find a way of keeping them.
Somehow or another, we had 8 or 10 in a class at one time, and we end up, by the time the class had graduated, I think we end up with maybe 3 or 4 of those. And by the time that the end of the year, several of those had quit.
Police Chief Charles Rodriguez knows the problem is there, but says the solution just isn't.
The only thing we can do at this time to begin, in this process is to look at the selection process, who's coming in, follow it through, and then determine where we're letting off.
Rodriguez says getting minorities to tell why they quit the force and then making the changes needed to keep them may be the key that brings an ethnic balance to the department.
Rick and Deborah, although the chief could not be specific about the changes now, he made one thing clear. Rodriguez says standards will not be lowered just to get more minorities on the force.
All right. Thank you, Kathy.
Good evening. There may be relief coming tonight for folks plagued by crime on the city's southeast side.
Now, the mayor and the police chief have come up with a new game plan against crooks. They call it Project Secure. Our Beverly Hinton is standing by live with more on tonight's happening. What have they come up with, Bev?
Well, Dave, I'm standing out here in front of Fire Station 13, and as of October 1st, this is going to be the contact point for Project Secure. Now, let me explain how this works. Let's say a neighbor has a non-emergency complaint. They come down here to Fire Station 13, fill out a complaint form. Later on in the day, a police officer picks it up. He knows the neighborhood. He can talk to the neighbor if need be, try to figure out a way to solve the problem. Now, this is a crime prevention project. It's sponsored by the Metropolitan Congregational Alliance, and it's all geared to make it easier for this community to communicate with police. Tonight's kickoff meeting was a triumph, marking the first sign of progress in a project that has been in the works for 2 years. City officials who helped pull it together joined in the celebration.
This is a practical, nuts and bolts, neighborhood approach, and I think that it has a good chance of success.
We're willing to help in preventing the crime in your neighborhood. The police can't do it alone. We have to have you to help us, and I think it's great that you're doing that through this organization.
The neighborhoods involved in the Secure program are in the areas served by St. Cecilia's, McKinley Avenue Methodist, and Mission Concepcion churches. Earlier tonight, we talked to the neighbors about the crime problem, and the answers were not very alarming.
Yeah, we haven't had any trouble around here, but as far as burglaries now, we have.
Back at the meeting, an MCA member explained.
The reason is because a lot of people in the neighborhood don't get involved with each other. They kind of shut themselves in and don't know what 2 blocks or a block from there. We have yet.
Now, also at the meeting tonight, the mayor and police chief agreed to meet with MCA in a couple of months to talk about the progress of Project Secure and also to talk about funding to spread this program all over the city. Live from Fire Station 13, Beverly Hinton, News 4, San Antonio.
It's a prototype, hopefully. Okay, thanks, Bev. A pilot project aimed at reducing neighborhood crime was unveiled here tonight. In the audience, Mayor Henry Cisneros and the police chief, Charles Rodriguez. The two listened intently as members of the Metropolitan Congregational Alliance explained Project Secure, the goal of the project to cut down on crime by making police patrolmen a more visible, integral part of the neighborhood. Under the project, a neighborhood advisory council would be established, as well as a community checkpoint where citizens could meet with police. And the police department will do its part by providing crime data and newsletters.
What is being done here has never been done before. And so you are to be congratulated as a community for showing the leadership and initiative to do something very, very different. And I think it has an excellent chance for success.
Right now, the project is limited to neighborhoods in the southeast part of town, but if successful, the project could spread to other parts of the city. A funeral was held today for the elderly East Side man who died last week from injuries he received in a robbery. 60-year-old Albert Johnson, who was blind, tried to fight off his attackers, but he lost his portable radio and later his life. Police still don't have suspects in the case. Cash donations helped defray the cost of the funeral, which was $1,000. Mayor Henry Cisneros was one who chipped in to help. Shocked mourners say the death of Albert Johnson will unite the neighborhood there, though, and tonight they joined forces to fight crime in that area. Frank Guerra reports.
But it is pitiful just to think that the man was blind and harming no one.
Ray Hood is but one of many East Side residents who are angered and sickened by the crime that ended the life of Albert Johnson. Tonight, some of them, citizens and business leaders, met with Police Chief Charles Rodriguez to ask the one question: how to stop crime in their neighborhoods. The chief was candid.
Can we expect them? Can we expect that change within 90 days?
I doubt it. Telling the residents his department, with its limited resources, could only do so much, and that it would take the citizens' active cooperation to combat crime.
They're the eyes and ears for us. They're the ones that are going to have to be used as witnesses in some situations where they're the complainants. They're the ones that are going to have to support us. And they're the ones that are going to have to show some kind of unity.
Police know that Johnson's death will bear greater pressure on the department to perform.
I think they should press us on it because we're all concerned about the community and what happens in that particular community. It brings out the people to get more involved in helping us enforce the laws in this city.
We citizens need to cooperate with the police force because certainly they cannot do it all by themselves.
Frank Guerra, Channel 5 Eyewitness News.
Meanwhile, shooting down crime on the city's east side is the objective of a group that met with Police Chief Charles Rodriguez tonight. As Kelly Craig reports, their concerns were answered with bare facts rather than false hope.
We need regular patrols, we need them continuous, and we need them ongoing.
Prostitution, drug trafficking, vandalism. No matter what the problem, their need was the same. More police patrol on Cherry Street. After more than 40 Cherry Street prostitutes and their clients were arrested this weekend, these residents wanted assurance that they wouldn't go back into business after a slap on the wrist. It may not have been what they wanted to hear, but Chief Rodriguez gave them no false hope.
The unfortunate thing about prostitution is that you just don't clean it up. The only thing you do is make it go underground or you just make it move.
The chief also laid it on the line about getting more police in the area. Even though the force has been beefed up somewhat, he made it clear it's not enough.
The reality is, right now, is that we're short of manpower. San Antonio's going too fast.
They came with questions. They left with one answer that directly involves their input. The message was clear. In order to curtail the violence, citizens and police must work together as a team. The Cherry Street Association is now forming a task force to do just that. Kelly Craig, KSAT 12 News Tonight.
We may have heard the last of complaints about the city's emergency dispatch system. The police department is sporting 13 new computer consoles that officials say is a major step in developing a state-of-the-art communications center. Police beat reporter Mary Walker got a first-hand look at the $300,000 worth of equipment.
Computer console went online here 11 days ago, and the beauty of it, says the longtime communications chief, is that it doesn't break down. A possible computer breakdown was blamed last May when police failed to respond to this elderly San Antonio woman's residence after she allegedly called to report someone breaking into her home. 79-year-old Grace Herring was robbed and severely beaten because a call got lost in the computer. The new system, officials say, feature color screens that constantly alert dispatchers to pending calls and to those which should receive top priority.
If you've got a robbery, you've got a homicide, any type of shooting or robbery in action, again, it would let me know which one would be the one to prioritize on.
Reduce our response time, and we will be able to check on suspects and get information probably in a fraction of the time that we're having to do that now.
The head of this communications division believes these will be the last consoles the police department will ever have to buy. Mary Walker, KSAT 12 News.
San Antonio police will soon be able to trace emergency telephone calls coming into the city's 911 system thanks to a state-of-the-art console paid for in part by a government grant. Today marked the first public showing of the new Centracom switchboard at police headquarters. The $300,000 unit is being phased in as part of the emergency response system overhaul. Incoming calls are color-coded on a display screen to help dispatchers prioritize pending cases. Our new city budget set aside $250,000 for those improvements, and the federal government paid for the rest. Supervisors don't expect any problem retraining more than 40 dispatchers to use Centracom.
It's designed for the users. Basically, you got about a 6-page illustrated book to read, and if you can push buttons, you can operate it.
The system replaces the one installed in 1974 and ought to be fully operational within the next year. At least one of the council members is finding the city's crime problem too close for comfort tonight. While working with the rest of his colleagues on a surface water question, Councilman Bob Thompson learned this evening his home had been burglarized. Police say the chances are good that the person who did that has a long history of committing crimes. It's ironic that the council looked into a program to handle habitual criminals during today's session. But Police Chief Charles Rodriguez told council members it'll take more manpower to end the problem.
You need the manpower because it involves surveillances, backups, it involves time consumed by people relieving and so forth. As you recall, there was some comment there that we're putting in all this overtime, and by the way, it would also include a lot of overtime.
City Council told Rodriguez to come back soon with a report on what kind of money and manpower it would take to get the program started here. Council members tackled surface. They're sitting on pins and needles. That's how Police Chief Charles Rodriguez today described 18 of his officers who have been nominated to serve as Assistant Chiefs of Police. Currently, the department's trying to fill the 2 positions which were created last October during contract negotiations between police and the city. The department did have until October 1st, of course that was yesterday, to name the Assistant Chiefs. Today, Rodriguez told reporters he is near to making his decision.
Still wondering, and I understand there's bets going on, and people don't know what's, because it's been so top secret. Usually there's a lot of leaks on something like this, and in this particular case, you see me run around with my briefcase, that's where it's all at.
The chief says he hopes to open his briefcase by early next week and announce his selections.
Tonight, stunned residents of a North Side neighborhood are asking themselves why one of their neighbors shot and killed his 4-year-old daughter last night and then turned the gun on himself. Friends say Quincy Robinson loved his daughter Melissa more than anything in the world, and the incident has them in a state of shock. News 4 reporter Stephanie King has more on the tragedy.
These children live in the Francis Fury apartment complex where the fatal shooting took place. Every day they played with Melissa, fondling the kittens and riding bikes.
These children are asking the same questions we all are. Why? It's difficult to explain to them, but they do understand one thing. That is, Mr. Robinson and little Melissa won't be coming back.
Melissa doesn't come anymore. Who's that? Melissa.
Yolanda Hernandez saw Robinson and his daughter go into the apartment yesterday before the 2 were killed.
Yesterday, I only saw going in with Quincy. She was grabbing him by the hand, and I saw her carrying, and next thing I went in, saw her carrying, and they were walking fast.
Did it look unusual?
Yeah.
Inside the apartment today, Melissa's toys were where she'd left them, scattered around a now blood-stained room. Quincy Robinson was an airport police officer. Norma Garza knew him well, and she knew he wanted custody of Melissa.
He loved her very much, and he would do anything for her in the world. It was his life.
And when she heard the news,
I cried, and I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it. He was well loved by everybody, even me.
Stephanie King, News 4, San Antonio.
If you were near Kelly Air Force...
Some new charges now in a murder-suicide last week.
The chairman of the district attorney's domestic violence task force tonight is blaming a breakdown in the criminal justice system for the incident that caused the murder of 4-year-old Melissa Robinson here last week. Courthouse reporter Paul Venema is with us now to explain. Paul, you say they're blaming the law enforcement part of it.
The people with the task force are, Rick, that's right. Reports show that the child's mother filed assault charges against her husband last March. On April 17th, a warrant for his arrest was issued but never served.
The 4-year-old child was shot by her father, Quincy Robinson, on October 1st in an apparent murder-suicide. The man had abducted his daughter. His ex-wife called police, and according to the task force chairman, that's where the system broke down.
Naomi Robinson responded appropriately by immediately calling the police, who failed to take action on the protective order or to take any measure in an effort to ensure the safety of the child. Beyond this, no apparent action was taken to determine that Quincy Robinson was a fugitive.
Sheriff's Department records confirm the warrant charging Robinson with assault with intent to commit bodily harm against his wife was issued in April. But the sheriff said it was not served because of a 50,000 warrant backlog.
Let's not try to imply that if the man would have been picked up right away, he'd have stayed in jail until now. There's no way, not on a misdemeanor. That's the only point I want to make.
The chief of police said his officers did not check on outstanding warrants when they investigated the child's abduction.
We're being accused of several things, or at least some issues are being brought out. This is just one of them, and I couldn't respond to that right now.
The law enforcement link isn't the only part of the system which failed, according to the task force chairman. She said the community also failed for not committing ourselves to a change in attitudes and priorities in order to deter family violence.
Until we treat it as the crime it is, Dory Cott suggested the tragedy of family violence will continue to haunt us, Rick.
Did she make any suggestions today as to what might have been done?
One of the things that she suggested perhaps would be a good idea is that the police, when they're making a family disturbance call, check to see if there are outstanding warrants on the individuals involved, much like they do with a traffic situation. They call in and run it through the computer real quick. So that's among the things that could be done, but family disturbance calls are very difficult for police to handle, very dangerous. So whether that'll become part of their investigation still remains to be seen.
Okay, Paul. Thank you.
Sharon Jones.
And I'm Dan Quaid. Tonight, a renewed demand for answers in the murder of 4-year-old Melissa Robinson.
Tonight, a group concerned about battered spouses and abused children is asking some tough questions about the case. News 4 reporter Bruce Howard tells us there are still no answers.
Melissa Robinson murdered by her father Quincy, who then killed himself. All of this 8 days ago. Now Joyce Doricott, who's concerned about domestic violence, wants some answers from the police chief and the sheriff, who had a warrant for Quincy Robinson's arrest since April 17th, but nothing was done about it. And the police chief, did the department know about the warrant when it sent 2 patrolmen to the Robinson apartment after Melissa's father kidnapped her? The chief's investigation is continuing.
You know, we're being accused of several things, or at least some issues are being brought out. This is just one of them, and I couldn't respond to that.
And the sheriff, who says even if Robinson had been arrested on the misdemeanor assault of his wife, he would have been out of jail on bond.
Let's not try to imply that if the man would have been picked up right away, he'd have stayed in jail until now. There's no way. Not on a misdemeanor. That's the only point I want to make.
But Doricott says Robinson was just one of more than 100 people who have not been arrested for hurting family members. She says it's time to learn a lesson about all this.
And we must begin to change attitudes within the police department, the sheriff's department, and other segments of our community to say that just because you are born to someone or live with someone does not give them the right to assault you and then have the criminal justice system seem to turn the other way.
Bruce Howard, News 4 San Antonio.
District Attorney Sam Millsap tells us he wholeheartedly agrees with the statements made by the Domestic Violence Task Force today. Millsap says a coordinated effort between prosecutors and police is needed to fight the problem of domestic violence. In particular, he says law officers must put a high priority on arrest warrants resulting from such violence. Millsap points out deputies made no effort to serve the arrest warrant on Quincy Robinson, but he says 2 other civil warrants that were issued after the arrest warrant were served. Both of those other warrants required Quincy to appear in court on civil matters.
Now, Sharon, as you know, national attention is now being focused on the problem of the...
Last year, the city agreed as part of its negotiated contract with police to create 2 assistant chief positions. And today, Police Chief Charles Rodriguez held a press conference to announce his selections to fill the 2 new jobs. Frank Guerra has the story.
The announcement was brief and unceremonious.
My choice for the assistant chief's position are sitting beside me here now. One is Deputy Chief Frank Hoyak, and the other is Community Relations Captain James Robinson.
With his selection, Robinson becomes the highest-ranking black ever in the San Antonio Police Department. It will be his responsibility to help manage the support services.
I was not notified until this morning, so I too am still somewhat elated about the decision that the chief made. And I know it's a major responsibility, and I'm looking forward to the challenge of handling one of these bureaus and moving the department forward as I think we can go.
Deputy Chief Frank Hoyak served as acting chief before Rodriguez was hired by the city. His job now to manage the department's operations.
It's a sobering decision to step to a higher level of responsibility. Obviously, my responsibility is going to increase several-fold.
Hoyak and Robinson were chosen from among 18 candidates. They were judged on their performance, experience, background, and education. And how will this affect the chief's job?
Well, it'll probably help me in eliminating a lot of the routine things that I've been doing. You know, I go through a ton of paperwork every day, and some of that is going to be done by the assistant chiefs.
Hoyak and Robinson will assume their new jobs and their new job titles on October 15th. Frank Guerra, Channel 5 Eyewitness News.
Good evening. City Hall says we need more blacks and Hispanics in the police department.
But a high-ranking police department official doesn't like the way black applications are being pushed through. Tonight, Beverly Hinton explains the situation and tells us the police chief is not in agreement with those accusations of reverse discrimination.
I think they're charges that were probably made kind of emotional-like, and I don't think any of the charges he's made are going to stand up. You know.
The charges Chief Rodriguez is talking about came from applicant processing sergeant Horace Neavis. He sent a letter to the chief requesting a transfer because he says the department is practicing reverse discrimination against Anglo and Hispanic applicants. He says blacks are tested and sent in for immediate processing, while Anglos and Hispanics are sent home to be contacted later. Neavis says those blacks are getting lower test scores. Neavis also says qualifications for the amount of drugs used by an applicant have been lowered. Chief Rodriguez says he looked into these charges and so far finds them untrue. Neavis also says Rodriguez called him disloyal.
Not telling me where or when, but the fact that I was disloyal to the department and that he was going to transfer.
He has asked to transfer, so we're going to oblige him.
But you're not transferring because he's disloyal?
No, he has to be transferred.
Earlier this evening, there was talk in the police department that the federal government might step in if San Antonio didn't hire enough black officers, but Chief Rodriguez says that'll never happen. He plans to hire qualified black officers. In the meantime, he'll be looking for a new assignment for Sergeant Neavis. Beverly Hinton, News 4, San Antonio.